Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting to order for the Town of Scituate Board of Selectmen for Tuesday, March 5th, 2019. And at this time, I'd like to have an acceptance of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All those signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Good evening. Are there any walk-ins tonight?
Hi, John.
Scott?
Couple weeks ago,
Name and address?
Thank
you.
Scott Greenbaum, 40 Damon Road. A couple weeks ago, I went into DPW and mentioned the sub-power snow removal in the Sand Hill areas, and they don't seem to have made much progress on it. They're plowing most of the roads, maybe 1.25 car lengths wide, not salting very well. It's been treacherous to walk the dogs. Many of the neighbors have mentioned that. And some streets are not even getting plowed. And just thought that it's time to mention that. I mean,
When are these pictures, Scott?
most of these pictures are either this snowstorm or snow event or the one 2 weeks ago.
Okay. So I know that these were these taken during the storms? Or was
They're
it-
right after them. So, I know there's a priority to some of the streets. Jericho's always clean. But as soon as I drive out in the neighborhood, I notice everybody else is nice and clean, and we're still an ice patch, and nothing's done. And, it's treacherous. You can drive through it, but can't pass a car. You got to pull off into the snow. Cars coming the other direction. And unfortunately, a lot of the dog walkers around their area are not that young, and somebody's going to fall one of these days. The other thing to note is we have a lot of new neighbors, and 5 or 6, 7 years ago, there was a thing to keep the basements from being pumped on the road during the winter time. The new people don't know it, and that's adding to the icing conditions, and probably need to go through that initiative again because it does get quite dangerous out there.
What street do you live on again?
I live on Damon.
On Damon, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I got back last night from being in San Diego, and I had to block the road to shovel out my area to get my car back in.
We can take a look. We'll find out who the route is, Scott, and see if they could maybe, we can take a look at it.
It could be a little more than that, okay?
Yeah, I mean, the guidance should be,
So, I don't do it for the town, but my whole life, I rode with my father, I do it for the state, all right? So, if you want some answers, if Kevin can't give them to you, I can give them to you, okay? It's really what it comes down to is money. How much do you want to spend to have black roads? You want black, wet roads, you have to spend the money. You have to go out ahead of time, and you have to keep at it. You have to have enough equipment. It's really what it comes down to. One thing that and I've said it a million times, but what the residents can do to help things is not park on the roads. Get off the roads. If you have to go on your front lawn, just do it, so let them clear the roads. They move the car and you got the spot there, and it looks like it was never done, so. Another thing is if they're having their driveways plowed or whatever, doing it themselves or private contractor, if that snow gets pushed out on the street, there should be some type of repercussion from that. When they plow the driveway out and leave it out on the street, it's, the state does.
yeah, no, I understand. But one of the things is, the first pass, he's only going one time down, he comes back 3 hours later, he can't even see where the side of the road is. And, this morning, the school bus could not turn from Damon to Spalding Road. The school bus driver had to drive around somehow to get to the kids. I mean, that's, the road should be adequate for the school buses by 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning.
Another thing you want to be aware of is how many towns and states, areas do you drive in, and they're advertising for plow trucks. What does that tell you? They need to pay more money. They're not getting, the guys maybe getting through. It's time to look at it. It all comes down to money.
I understand.
Yeah, no, and Scott's never here. He's never one to complain, but, you have a point.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Any other walk-ins? All right, seeing none, Jim, we're going to move on to the report of the town administrator.
I was going to start by saying what a good job I thought the plow crews did this last fall. I'll skip over that. But we are saying, I think the brining that we're doing is working. I think people are seeing that. We're not getting the adhesion that we used to get, so the roads become, especially the main roads, become cleaner much quicker. I did have several residents stop me this morning complimenting me on how well the roads were done and putting that up to Kevin, so.
Can I
we'll take a
interrupt
look
there
at
for a
Sand Hills.
second? If you want to see a great interview about the brining and how it works in town, you know, this is where we go to SCTV with our videographer back here, Cam Stone, who did it, did an interview with the DPW director and Highway Department, and great job. So that's on SCTV, it's also on what else, Cam?
YouTube.
YouTube? There you go, Facebook, sorry, Jim.
They're not aliens, they're just salt lines in the street. So that's been working. We think we're saving significant amounts of money. I think Kevin told me it's around $300 through the whole town. And it really works well, and it can stop us from having to bring a crew in on the weekend if it gets icy or something, because it works so well. So a couple updates for the board. The Oceanside Drive water main replacement bid, we opened that recently. We're still going through that. We feel there is sufficient funds to finish that project down there. This is the last 2 miles of the cast iron pipe. And that project is scheduled right now to start in mid-April.
Good.
So that'll be coming to the board for that contract. Also, we opened the bids for the reconstruction of the Egypt Beach parking lot today. Those all came in under budget. The project will include the installation of a water line from the street to right where the beach entrance is, and the DPW will be installing a shower similar to the one at Peggotty Beach there. That project, hopefully the plan is that we will have the contract for the board at the next Selectmen's meeting, and that project will start as soon as possible so it's ready for the summertime. St. Patrick's Day is on St. Patrick's Day this year. We did meet with Ed Kelly today. I know there's some concerns about the snow piles. We are expecting some warm weather this coming weekend, but I've already talked to the DPW, and if we think there's going to be a problem, we will clean the sidewalks along the parade route so people will have a place to stand, so we'll be ready for St. Patrick's Day and ready to go. And finally, Cohasset had a meeting last week, an internal meeting about the sewer projects, whether they want to go with the larger project or the smaller project. I'll be meeting with their town manager next week, and hopefully we'll get some direction on them and have a plan either for the smaller plan that I've talked to the board about or the big plan to get going with soaring North Scituate, at least North Scituate, Minot, and the Gannett areas and get those going.
So Jim, was that with the sewer commissioners of Cohasset, or was it?
Sewer commissioners,
Selectmen?
selectmen, residents, pretty much anybody who wanted to come, and they were there for a little while. All I got from Christine was it was a very good meeting, but we'll sit down next week, and
They take a vote, do we know, or?
I don't know. I'm going to sit down next week, and we'll hash it out and find out where they're going. But we will come up with a plan, again, either the smaller scale or the larger scale, but we're anticipating getting an idea where they want to go next week.
Good.
That's all I got.
The board, anybody on that?
Oh, just one question, we're getting an update on the water, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Never mind, I won't jump the gun.
I don't want to steal Kevin's thunder, because he's coming in for that.
All right, we'll move on to the
Let me,
7:15.
well,
Yeah.
just one quick question on the sewer. What's the timeline of what's the quickest that it could actually happen? If we go with the smaller, let's say it's a smaller instead of the larger,
3 years?
3 years?
Yeah.
And that would be North Scituate, Gannett,
It'll be North Scituate. How far down would get, Tony, down towards Gannett and Minot? I couldn't tell you, but
Be Border Street, though. That would
North
be the
Scituate
connection, right?
would be the quickest, and that'll be at least 3 years.
I think they're going through Border Street, or are they going up Main Street?
It depends on which one you're talking
Countrywide.
about. The small one?
Small one, do they go through
We
Main
talked about
Street?
going down South Main Street.
Oh, it is, okay, so it's not Border, all
So
right.
Cohasset would pick up their South Main Street neighborhood because that contributes to the nitrogen loading in the river that goes into the harbor.
Yep.
So we would go right down there, pick up those neighborhoods, connect to their current system, send that storage to the Cohasset treatment plant, and then take the same amount of storage from the other side of Cohasset and wheel that over to Hull.
right?
Other questions, anybody? All right, move on to our 7:15. Chief, John Murphy's here. Appreciate, John, if you could come up. This is, there are certain times that we have, many times I sit up here and I go, boy, I really don't want to be sitting in this chair. These are the times I have to say, it's an honor to be able to be here, to acknowledge it. So, Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you, if you don't mind.
I have two firefighters and a deputy chief, 30-year tenure awards working for the town. So I'm going to start with Ray Sanborn, couldn't make it tonight, but Ray came on just before I did. He first came on working for the highway department in '89, and that's how he got his third year. He came on for the fire department in 1994, and he was actually in the first class. He graduated the fire academy, and we started sending out firefighters. We do it every year since, but the first class that we sent from Scituate to fire academy, where he was involved in the class, along with 3 other firefighters. He was also awarded a group hero award. This was a group of firefighters that got an award for the rescues during the 2013 storm. During the Nemo storm, we had a a lot of rescues out there. So several firefighters we got that award, including one of the recipients tonight. But Ray Sanborn, again, we thank him for his 30 years of service for the town, 25 years for the fire, 5 for the highway. Couldn't be here tonight. So I'm going to move on to Charlie Hollis. Charlie Hollis has 32 years with the fire department. Charlie, why don't you come on up? Charlie was first hired as a dispatcher in December of '84, and he worked as a dispatcher through 1987. And Charlie was a very good dispatcher. He taught a lot of other people as he got on the job dispatching, and he was a great mentor to many firefighters, including myself, when I got on. Charlie had a lot of patience, a lot of determination. He was a great EMT and taught a lot of the young EMTs when I came on, to have patience and just bedside manner and how to treat people right. And Charlie, I thank you for that personally and for everybody else in the department. Charlie also is talking about retirement. Charlie has 32 years, including his 2 years as a dispatcher, talking about possibly the summer retiring, moving on from his dedicated service. So he has a total of 32 years, I believe 4 months with the fire department at this point. So Charlie's brother, Scott, also worked for the town. So 2 brothers worked for the town fire department, putting 32 years in each. Quite dedicated. Charlie grew up in Scituate, and the family, Sean, and probably do as well. So, Charlie, I want to thank you for your 32 years of service for the fire department, your 10-year award. Thank you personally. And the next, the last award I have here is for our Deputy Fire Chief, Al Elliott. Come on up, Al. Al and Charlie actually came on the same day, 30 years ago in the fire department, as Charlie did a couple of years of dispatch prior to that. But they both came on February 21st, 1989 together. And I know Charlie and Al are great friends, so it's nice for them to be here tonight. I'm getting this award on the same evening. So Al was our deputy chief at this time. He was promoted to lieutenant in May of '96, to captain in June of '07, the deputy chief February 13, 2015. Al also got the Blue Cross Blue Shield Lifesaver Award for the first person in Scituate to successfully defibrillate somebody having a heart attack when they lived. So they were early equipment back in '92. So he got that award from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Him and 3 other personnel, firefighters, saved somebody with a defibrillator. They were, like I said, they were first coming out probably in the early '90s, and he made the save. So he got an award from Blue Cross Blue Shield, and and our SAVE program was started in the state shortly after we lost children at Hadley Road. That happened in April '95. In '96, the state funded our SAVE program, where we go into the schools and teach all the young children fire safety. Al was our first sort of leader for that program. He went into the schools, taught them, had the patients. He rented open houses. We got 25 years this year. 23. So 23 years Al led that program for many of those years, and it's successful today. That program, when it started out, we were averaging 23 to 25 children dying in fires every year. Now it's less than 2. So it's a great program for the school. These kids remember what they learned going on. It's kindergarten, 3rd grade?
Yes. Preschool.
Preschool, 3rd grade. So they keep going. We have other personnel that take it over now, but Al was the one that started the program for Scituate. He's also on the dive team for 12 years. Al and I drove together for many years, and it's and all the other demands he volunteered for. He made sure that the dive team he dove for many years. It's a challenging task for many, but he did that for 12 years. And when you get deputy chief, you sort of have to step aside. It is what it is, but otherwise he'd probably still be in a flippers right now. So also one of the other programs we have is Citizens Emergency Response Team, trying to get neighborhood people involved to help out during the storms and help their neighbors. Al was one of the teachers and instructors in that as well. And he was also part of that group in the 2013 Storm Nemo that got the award, that group award, for being on duty for the personnel helping rescue people. So, quite a lengthy, you know, full file out, some good stuff. Either full for bad stuff or full for good stuff. So, and you know, I was asked when I first was pursuing the chief job from somebody in corporate, and they say, you know, what are the things you really need? What are some of the assets you need? I said, you need a good number two. You need a good number two to go in there to have this job. And I've been fortunate to have a good number two. Al came on just 4 months after I did as deputy chief. He's trustworthy, intelligent, hardworking, and I'm fortunate as a chief to have Al as a deputy chief. He makes my job easier every day. We work well together, and I do appreciate it. Please use it.
Thanks, Al.
Al, thank you, too.
Thank you.
Charlie, thank you. I just want to, you know, I'm sure Sean probably could say more. I think it's unique that you find people who are able to stay in a job for 30 years. You grow up in the town, you stay. It's really rare to find that in this day and age. The commitment's not there. And I just say, you know, between the institutional knowledge of everything, that's a big loss when you do retire. I don't think you should right now, but I just think in all seriousness, it's a dedication that's well worth noting, because 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, people tended to stay in their jobs. They don't do that now. And so I just say thank you, certainly for the town, for the people you saved, for their families. It's appreciated. So, both of you. Sean?
I'd like to just, you know, I might repeat what John said, but having grown up in this town, you know, I know both these gentlemen's families, and I think I was on Al's baseball team many years ago. You make this town, and, you know, he might be a strong number two, but every fire person in your department is what makes you look good. And I think we have one of the best. You know, we don't have firemen anymore. They're EMTs, they're doctors coming to the house. I am so glad I live in this town, and I'm not just saying that because you guys are sitting here. Police as well, same thing. This is a great town to live because of people like yourself. DPW, same thing, schools. So I really thank you guys for, like John said, you know, maybe you could have changed to a different town, lateraled out, got more money, but, you know, you stayed here, and we appreciate that. The fact that you know the town, you know the families, it's, you know, this wonderful program that the chief just spoke about. I remember Bart Curran telling us about that, how you go into schools and get dressed in front of the young kids so you don't scare them. God forbid you ever have to go into that home. It's things like that that average person might not think about that you guys do when you're not, you know, fighting fires and saving people's lives. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
No,
Can't
just-
add any more to that.
Yeah, just repeat what Sean said. We're lucky, you know, you realize it when you see the fire truck and the ambulance pull up to your own house because you have a situation, how really, really lucky you are. And a lot of us have had to do that, how small or large the situation is. So like Sean said, I'm really happy that you guys are protecting us, and you do a great job. So thank you.
And if you could relay, Chief, to Mr. Sambor, too, just let him know. I wish you were here. Frankly, it is a nice moment for us to say thank you. I know sometimes you're like, oh, gee, do I have to go up there? Do I really want to go up there? But no, it's the town. It's not us. It's the town that really should be able to say thank you, and that's it. So, good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Next, we're going to move on to a discussion, maybe vote, of the Scituate Public Schools Statement of Interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, otherwise known as the MSBA. Superintendent Ron Griffin, good evening. And
Oh, perfect.
Paul Dolan, thank you. Donlan, sorry, I said Dolan by mistake. I'm thinking of the Dolan one. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
So you want to build a school?
With your permission, we'd like to ask to build a school. Yes.
You'd like to ask for bags of money to Scott.
Yeah. I guess I'd just start by maybe underscoring some of the sentiment that Mr. Harris mentioned with the fire department and the police department, the program that they have in the schools. I get down there to watch, their program with the kids. And not only is it powerful and impactful for the students' safety, but for some of these students, that becomes their career path. That's the thing that inspires them to be the next firefighter who is part of the Scituate Fire Department for 32 years. So many thanks to our colleagues over in the fire department for all their work they do in the schools. You should see the students' faces when they come in and they have all that equipment. It changes their trajectory in life sometimes, so it's great.
So,
Yes.
now, we're here for the SOI.
That's correct. So today I come before you to request your authorization to actually submit 2 statements of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. A little bit about some context, and you have it all in your backup, but just to give you a brief summary. A statement of interest is exactly that. It doesn't commit any resources or funding in any way, but it identifies that a school district and a community is interested in partnering with the Massachusetts School Building Authority to explore a potential project. This community did an SOI, 7 years ago now, 8 years ago now with the middle school. And with elementary schools, it looks similar. Today, I'm before you to request 2 SOIs, one for the Cushing Elementary School and one for the Hadley Elementary School. The reason that there's 2 SOIs is because it's our proposal to do what's called a consolidation project. And that would be building a new building that would ultimately replace both the Cushing and the Hadley Elementary School. We've had a number of teams doing research to support this recommendation. I'll give you a little bit of that background information. It's also in your backup as well. Last month, you had Abebe & Associates come down to give you a summary of their report. They did an analysis of the facilities. These facilities have served our children for nearly, well over half a century. We've got incredibly dedicated staff and leaders in these schools. But the schools themselves, despite being well-maintained, really need to be replaced at this point. There's a number of pretty significant facilities needs in terms of the structure of the facilities, but I think more importantly, the configuration of the facilities themselves just no longer supports the educational program for the 21st century. The facilities, the elementary school classrooms are organized around large spaces like gymnasiums, which can be difficult and distracting sometimes, and don't allow a lot of that spill out and flexibility that just 21st century curriculum and 21st century pedagogy demands and requires. Our staff do incredible work and creative work to try to get around some of those facilities challenges, but we believe that the consolidation and building of a new facility will allow them to do even more with what they already are doing. So an SOI would allow us to start the process and to explore that work with the MSBA. Some common questions that I get about the SOI that I'd like to just proactively answer. An SOI does not commit any money for the town, the school department, community in any way. An SOI doesn't determine where the location of a facility would be at all. It simply says we would like to consolidate these 2 into something new. It doesn't identify if that's a feasible project. That would be the next phase of the process if we're ultimately accepted by the MSBA. So determinations of what kind of building would it look like? Is it 1 floor or is it 2 floors? What is the layout? All of that would be later in the process. It does, however, put our project recommendation up with a number of other project recommendations in the Commonwealth. The MSBA then determines the need. It's a need-based process. And if we're selected, we would then partner with them on the next stage, which would be feasibility. I can certainly answer any questions that you've got. That's a very broad summary, and I know you've got a lot of information in your packet as well.
Sean?
Is it possible that the MSBA could only choose one of the 2? Let's say they say, oh, Hadley School's in better shape, therefore, gets lower marks, but Cushing is, is it possible they could put one in front of the other? I know, and I agree with you, you want to, what you're doing. Is that possible?
It's a really great question. The answer is no. So the way that we configure the SOIs is that one of the SOIs, well, let me take a step back. Both SOIs are designed to give the MSBA an overview of what the facilities look like. The Cushing SOI talks about the Cushing facility. The Hadley SOI talks about the Hadley facility. The priority for the school district and for the community, as per our proposal, is that we have a consolidation and new building. The priority is the new building, so they can't reject one or the other because the priority is just one project, which is a new building. They could reject that project, but the new building is for both buildings to be consolidated. So it wouldn't be that they would accept Hatherley or Cushing, they would accept the project together, and we submit 2 forms, if you will, just to give information about both the buildings. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, yep, perfect.
Karen?
So the application process, in addition to support by this body, will be all of the other data that you've been presenting to us along the way? So they get this stack of information to assess the...
They get a summary of that information. So the 140 pages of need analysis and the 20-some-odd pages we've had of subcommittee analyses, they don't get those documents. They don't allow us to submit those documents directly. But we've been doing that work over the past year and a half to use that information as part of the statement of interest.
Okay.
And that information, if we're accepted, will also be used to start to feed into the feasibility process as well. So they don't get the actual documents, but they get a lot of that information that we'll use to
Right,
to
so
put
they'll
into
see
the
the
sub-
homework has been done.
Very much so.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I read the documentation. A couple, just questions on the process. Is the MSBA still paying about 40+% of a match
Yes, it varies each year, but yes.
in that ballpark? And what is the financial commitments? Because we're going to be putting a pool with every other town that's trying to build a school in the state.
True.
And they'll rank us, and they'll look at our schools and see which ones, when you said the need, it's not based on the wealth of a community, it's based on the deterioration of the building.
That's correct. So for example, if there's a building that's 150 years old in Boston, that's typically going to be higher rated than a building that's 65 years old here in Scituate,
Right.
regardless of the community.
So, so it's purely based on really need. But what are the financial commitments before you get to the point of actually bonding the project? So we get to this phase, I assume you hire a consultant to walk, I don't remember who we had for the middle school, but you hire somebody to walk you through the process. What are the financial commitments? Because, I mean, in my opinion, the schools are in a condition that need to be replaced. I mean, like you said, the basketball courts are right around the classrooms, it's an old building, the roof's leaking, and it's just probably not the educational model you guys want to move forward with. You know, the only issue really is cost.
Sure.
It's an expensive project. I'm going to guess a new elementary school probably about the same price of the middle school that we built, ballpark. You know, so it's a big number to the town.
Sure.
I asked Nancy to pull together kind of our debt information there to see, you know, hey, in 4 years is something dropping off this can just slide right in and won't, and unfortunately that's not the case. You know, there's some smaller things dropping off, like the Jenkins School. It will be coming up in the mid-20s or in the next 4 or 5 years, and then Wampatuck shortly after that, but no big chunk of money coming off where that's going to come back in. So, so I guess my question is, what's the financial commitment before we actually get in the line for the project? Is this like $1 million worth of studies and works and presentation coming together before we get in line?
So this allows us to get in line. So the SOI itself is what gets us in the line with no money committed in any way. If we're accepted, the next phase is feasibility, and there's a feasibility study, and there's funds that have to be appropriated for the study. The scope of that study determines how much it's going to cost for the study, but it's not a cheap study, there's no question about it. They can range in hundreds of thousands of dollars for this study, because it also includes initial schematics and design, so you get a sense of what the layout of a building might look like, what the square footage might be, and therefore, where could it go in your town? So it's not the fine detail of the design that would need to be done, but there are costs associated with that.
Do you remember what the cost was for, or either of you, the cost for the middle school?
$750.
$750.
Put $750 in for the middle school, and that was 130,000 square feet.
Right. And then,
There are, if you go into the MSBA website, there's broken up by elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools.
Right.
And they have all those costs right there. Feasibility is right there. So we just look at it, look at the same type of square footage that we're looking at. Peabody is, 58,000 square feet. That sounds pretty good. We're about 40 some odd right now. So we'll look at Peabody. We'll look at Holyoke. It's all right there for you, and we'll take an average of that. I'll present that to Ron, just like I did to John, and say, you know, this is what we're looking at. I think we can do it for this. We'll talk to the MSBA, and so we did this one for less than $750, but we allocated $750,000.
And if we're accepted into the process, one of the nice things is the MSBA serves as a partner with us as
Right.
well. So all of their expertise comes to bear with Scituate and helps us through some of that process.
Mhm.
Okay.
So whether it's a model school or unique, it would be determined in the next phase, I presume.
In that feasibility phase, correct.
So I had some questions. So this is for basically a new school, not
Correct.
to renovate any of the schools for the most part, right?
Correct.
One of the concerns I have is, if we're looking at the SOI 7 years ago, we're looking at maybe potentially 6 to 7 years before a new school's completed, if that's the time frame. Could be a little longer, or it's going to maybe slightly shorter. What do we do in the interim with the school buildings? And that's assuming that we'll have the funds to be able to build a new school in the next 7 years, 5 years. One of the concerns I have is, and the reason I mention is we have fire doors at Wampatuck. Capital now wants to spend $75,000 because they're saying they're out of code. Well, the whole school's out of code.
Sure.
So if we're going to replace fire doors and we're replacing this, we're replacing that because it's out of code, you know, are we going to be spending money on these schools when really we'd be kind of throwing money away if we're going to be getting a new school? So that's one of the concerns I have about what is the town as being school and town side,
Sure,
collectively, what is the plan for maintenance of these buildings for the next 5 to 7 years, if that's the take on it? Then it gets me back to the second question, which is, okay, I still think we as a collective town need to understand and identify how we maintain these going forward on a regular basis, because we don't want to be put in a position, and this is not saying anything to you, Ron, or Paul, or anybody in this room, but when these buildings were built, sadly, they weren't necessarily maintained the way they should have been on an annual basis, and we're at a point now where the buildings are in a situation where, just aside from the academic, standpoint, just a practical standpoint, the buildings are not in great shape. So we can spend money, $37 million, to do different this, fix the roof and whatever. But I think if we maintain them on a regular basis, at least from that standpoint, we shouldn't have problems. And it's not just school buildings, it's town buildings as a whole. I think that's a bigger issue I mentioned before about capital and funding our capital to be able to maintain things going forward. So that may not be a question that we can answer now, but that's something that the board and the town needs to identify. How are we going to maintain capital improvements or maintaining them going forward? But the first question I'm concerned about, only because what do we do in the next 5 years, 7 years to start maintaining buildings when we're going to maybe tear them down, or what happens if we don't? Then are we now 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road saying we got to do something different?
It's one of the biggest challenges that we face for facilities in the schools in general. I will say this past year we put together a pretty comprehensive facilities and maintenance plan for all of our schools, including the elementary schools. And we've got a couple of different contingency pathways specifically for the Cushing and the Hadley schools. So we have some short-term projects that allow us to do important maintenance just for safety and general operation. And we also have some longer-term projects and some larger projects further down in the plan if, in fact, MSBA doesn't select our SOI. We want to use the most comprehensive path, the SOI, as the first path, but it shouldn't be the only one. We shouldn't put all of our eggs in that basket. So as part of our plan, we have in years 3, 4, and 5, our out years for the 5-year facilities plan, some larger projects including full roof replacements, full window replacements. Those are multi-million-dollar projects. I want to be upfront and transparent with the community and with this board. And it would be better and I think more efficient in terms of our dollars and more effective in terms of impact on kids to do them with a new school rather than in a patchwork process. But we have those in as a contingency as well in the event that we aren't able to go through the MSBA, we're not selected.
I just would like to make a comment. That was a great questions, great answers, great response. Before Paul and you were here, we put a new roof on the old Jenkins School. So, and that will come up, and the maintenance issue will come up, and I might be one of the first ones to jump up, seeing how we have the middle school meeting we've been attending and seeing the, and this is getting a little ahead, but seeing the maintenance that's being done and the equipment that they've bought for these, the custodians is I think speaks for itself. So, Great,
And
great
I will
answers.
say
and-
that we had to give back some money at Gates, because we did some work at
Right.
Old Gates.
Right.
In
3, I
2010,
think.
maybe.
Or-
So we had to give back a little bit of money at Old Gates. We spent $1 million for the brickwork because of the water seepage. We did some work there, so it wasn't much, but they take that into account. So if we were to put on some windows, they're gonna take that into account if they pay for it.
Mhm.
So they paid for that, Old Gates. We got money back for that, out of that $1 million. So if they partner in with us, they're gonna take some back. But if they don't partner in with us, I mean, that's our money that we're gonna have to put in. And if we change the windows, which we're planning on doing, if we change the roof, which we're gonna plan on doing, we're on a plan in 2025.
21.
21. We have all those things all laid out. But like you said, if we got in,
It would be more comprehensive and a more efficient solution to have a new facility built. Otherwise, it's going to be a patchwork of solutions simply because the costs are going to be insurmountable, right? It costs more to do any project in pieces than it does to just mobilize a project.
Well, I think the other concern is that you don't get selected right away. You
Sure.
could be in the line for years. So you've got that fine line of how much you fix this one when you're still hoping to knock it down in a couple of years, so. What happened last time? How long were we in the queue? Did we get accepted right away?
yeah, we did.
Yeah, so we got kind of lucky last time. And you don't know what the temperature is right now of it, so I guess the right thing is to get in there. One thing I did want to talk about on the maintenance for 1 second, I mean, how old are those buildings? I mean, they're 60,
62 and 64.
yeah,
60
Hadley's first, and then Cushing's second, I think.
63, 65, but they're
Maybe 63 and
mid-60s.
yeah.
65,
So there is a life of a building, right? I mean, it's a 65-year-old building.
Yeah.
So aside from the educational model that you want to do, you just have to assume, as we try and put in our long-term planning, that buildings have to be replaced at times, and they just, it's not going to be cost-effective to rebuild it and put a new roof on it, and unfortunately, the funds aren't always available, but every decade, there's some sort of infrastructure that needs to be fixed in the town, and,
Sure.
Maintenance, you can put a little bit on maintenance, but it's not like we don't maintain our buildings. It's not like we don't pay attention to the leaky roof or whatever, but they just get old, and they get past their serviceable life, so it seems like we're at that time on these two buildings, so.
The architects had mentioned that as part of their analysis as well, as one of the questions we posed to them. How has the maintenance been done? And they came back and they were saying the maintenance has been done very well, but to your point, when you put through a few hundred children, small children, through a building day after day after day, it just wears faster than, say, your house, right? And there's no amount of maintenance that can help slow that wear and tear down necessarily.
And technology's changed too, as well. Instead of maybe
Dramatically,
flat
yeah.
roofs, you might have pitched roofs. Scott can answer, this is what he does full-time. So, and to Tony's point, yeah, they have been, and there will be people that make that argument, hey, they're brick buildings, they should last hundreds of years, and yeah, they probably could. But that's where I think you have to tie in the whole, how do you teach the children? And that's what just blew my mind, sitting in the middle school meeting, and it's all changed, and the gyms in the middle of the school are a perfect example.
Yeah, no, I think when
No
that
matter what you do,
presentation,
you still have.
I was thinking of the school that I went to, and it was in the 50s, but it wasn't centered around the entire classrooms. That to me is crazy. But whatever, at the time, they thought that was the trend, so that's why
Yeah.
they did it.
And I'll just say, our team, our staff does tremendous work despite the layout, and they continue to help students use hands-on projects and do authentic learning experiences. But trying to spill a classroom out into a learning area while the gym is playing basketball, it's a real challenge for them. Yeah.
It's like putting a candy store in the center of all the classrooms.
A little bit.
Questions from the audience? Does anybody have any questions? So, we're at I think you need a vote on this, right?
There are 2 SOI votes. I apologize in advance for the density of the language, but it is,
Karen, do you have it in front
I
of you?
have them.
I have copies if you'd like them as well.
Required to read
To
them,
read them.
which I
Do
apologize.
you want me to read one?
If you'd like to. Which one would you like? I'll do Hatherley, because my,
If you hand me one, I'll read it, just so.
All right.
Why don't we, want to start?
So do I move that we accept the, I don't just read this, I think you have to move to accept this. Well, I'll read it first. Okay. So the Hadley Elementary School vote resolved, having convened in an open meeting on March 5th, 2019, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Board of Selectmen of Scituate, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form to be dated April 4th, 2019, for the Hadley Elementary School located at 72 Ann Vinyl Road, Scituate, Mass. 02066, which includes the potential consolidation of elementary schools and construction of a new elementary school, and describes and explains the following deficiencies and priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 5, replacement, renovation, or modernization of a school facility system such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems. And priority 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance of the approval of the application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, region, district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
So moved by myself.
Second?
Second by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Tony, want to read
Now we'll
the
read the same thing. Question. Having convened in an open meeting on March 5th, 2019, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Board of Selectmen of Scituate, in accordance with its chapters, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form to be dated April 4th, 2019, for the Cushing Elementary School located at 1 Aberdeen Drive, Scituate, Mass. 02066, which includes the potential consolidation of elementary schools and construction of a new elementary school, and describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which the application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. In the future, priority 5, replacement, renovation, modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heaters, and ventilation systems, and priority 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete building in order to provide a full range of programs consistent with state and approval local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of the application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, region, district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts Building Authority.
So moved. Seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
There we go.
Thank you very much.
We're good.
I mean, the nuts and bolts of it are, if we can pay for 60 or 55% of the project instead of 100% of the project, it's a good thing, so
It's huge.
good luck.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very
Ron,
much.
thank you. Paul, thank you.
Thank you for reading this.
You're welcome.
All right, now, moving on, we're going to go on to our 7:30 discussion vote, interfund borrowing for replacement of vessel number 3. Pam Abitabli, our treasurer collector. Good evening.
Good evening.
So this is the vessel for
This is
the
the vessel.
harbor master, right?
The harbor master, yeah, with a pump and a monitor, fire pump and a monitor. This was approved. Stephen Moan, our harbor master for the town of Scituate, has asked me to borrow this Article 3, item UU, was approved at the April 2018 annual town meeting for a replacement of, as you said, vessel unit number 3 with a fire pump and monitor. We would do an interfund borrowing for the $430,000. I believe I know the harbor master will be in front of you tonight, right after me, with the contracts for the boat. So, as you all know, an interfund borrowing is against stabilization funds and will be replaced at the end of the fiscal year if used.
Why don't we bring Steve up now, since it's the same issue? If
Come
you don't
on up,
mind.
my friend.
Harbor Master Steve Moan. Steve, since we're talking about the boat, good evening.
Good evening.
So you're looking, we've already passed this at town meeting. Unfortunately, my screen has gone white, which
Yes.
sometimes happens. So this is just, is this the final payment of, for the boat, is what it is?
No, this is the whole
thing.
vote.
Okay,
Yeah, we haven't paid anything, right?
for 430, and that's
How much
it.
did we pass at town meeting?
430,000.
This is exactly
Oh, we'll get to that.
the amount?
No, the contract amount is a little bit different, not much.
Oh.
For 28,535, I think.
Oh, Tony, it's actually
Cheaper.
Wow.
by about 1,500. All right, so, questions from the board?
The only thing I had a question about was, are you holding on to the old, but it says replacing it? I just don't remember the details. I thought we were gonna hold on to the old one, just,
Until the new boat comes,
Oh,
we'll
just-
be
okay.
disposing of the boat.
we're gonna sell it?
Auction.
I'll give it away.
Okay. No, we talked about this a lot last year.
Sean?
Timeframe, I was talking to some commercial fishermen.
We expect delivery about June 1st next year.
Really?
Next.
June 1st, 20.
20, okay. Could you just talk, well, maybe not here, no, not, maybe on the next one. We'll just talk about some of the details a little bit.
Yeah, this is the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I was thinking of doing together. We talk about
Okay.
the funding and then talk about the boat, and then
Yeah.
that's it. We gotta vote it up. Both of them will do it.
Well, I
So
worked
next
with
week.
Chief Murphy, myself,
Okay.
on the spec of the boat. I worked also with Sean McCarthy. He helped us with contracts and advertising the bid package on, I think it was Combis, the Central Register, and the newspaper. So it was kind of a team effort.
This is the one that has the back platform where
Yes.
people can be, where before. Yeah, that's what we're talking about, yeah. Go out deeper into the sea, too.
Working platform,
Yeah.
25 knot it's gonna be able to reach this, people that fish in the winter, we can now match that. This boat can match where they're gonna go, so we can reach them.
Get out
in
there.
hazardous seas.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Also gets us out of the weather in the wintertime. And like the chief says, we get out there in more difficult, heavier sea conditions.
Good.
Generally, that's when there's a problem.
Right.
Steve, is that boat still at Young's that's very similar to this? And I
Yes,
forget
it
the
is.
name of it, the
Um,
John Dolby?
James
James
Dolby.
Dolby. So, if you guys are down there and I'm with you, I'll point out the boat that this will look like.
It's a sister ship.
Right,
Good.
This
Is that a
is-
private boat, or is it?
Yes, it is.
right, right.
He let us go through the boat, look at it, get some ideas when we were designing ours, so we had some time to you and I spent several visits to that boat. We went inside, went through the whole thing, went through the engine, so it's exactly what we're looking for.
It's a Maine-built boat. It's not built out in this country or down south. It's built up in
Yeah,
Maine.
built up in Maine.
Right.
Very good builder, does quality work.
I like that.
Should be in Scituate long after I'm probably dead and gone.
It's not nice.
I don't know if I've got 100 years left. It's even 50, but.
Questions from the board? Anybody?
I mean, the town voted for it, so this has the pump in it too, right? This is, so we thought we could fight fires from the ocean as well.
Marine fires and boat fires are put up from the water, they're not put up from land. So they're difficult from land. The biggest fire we have in town is $6 million with James Landing. Due to the explosions and the continuous burning of the boats in the marina, these are the challenges getting there. It's like burning tires, what's that fire business?
All right, beyond that, I just think it, as a rescue, it just will serve many purposes. The chief's explained it, just like an ambulance on the water. It's really,
It's like a pickup truck.
Pickup truck.
yeah.
It's gonna have all, it's gonna be able to do so much with that working platform on the back, the EMS, to dive operations, to hazmat, to firefighting. So from my perspective, and exactly what Steve has to do as well.
Blessing of the fleet. Get everybody on board one.
And this is the total cost, right?
Yes.
Motion?
Motion, please.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve the interfund borrowing prepared by the Treasurer Collector in the amount of $430,000 for the purpose of replacing vessel unit number 3 with a fire pump and monitor.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
And
One more? Motion?
I think we have another one, though.
Move to award the contract to SW Boat Works for the manufacture of the 34-foot fiberglass down east commercial boat in the amount of $428,535.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I know a great name for it. It'd be great for Gilbert Patterson. Call it the Gilly or something, but any event. I think that's it, Steve. You got it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the next is the interview for board and committee applications, or applicants. And right now, we have the water resource. And let me just get to my,
Just use mine, John.
you mind? Okay.
No, go ahead.
Is Jacqueline Bond here? If you could come on down, please. You're looking to get on the water resource committee. And I think after that, we have Kevin Finney. Is Kevin here? Good. We'll go with you? Yep. If you don't mind, you want to get on the water resource, if you could just give us a little, your background, why you want to do it, and, what you can add to it, what you think's
Okay. Well, I'm Jacqueline Bone, and I'm at 16 Carver Ave, and I moved to Scituate in 2012. I had previously lived in New England in the 80s and had transferred back to California. I was in technology for 25 years. And that whole time, I worked to get back to Scituate because we spent every summer here and after we had left, and I just love the community and everything. I just enjoyed being here, and that's why I moved back. Everyone thinks I've lost my mind, coming from California, but I prefer it.
You found your mind. There you go.
I love it. And I know that we have to be very careful about our water with the new developments coming in and maintaining, the water resources that we have and making sure, that we take care of it. And I really am passionate about keeping Scituate the nice community that it is. And I've always wanted to be on the committee. I help with the elections, and it's something that I would be interested in doing.
Good.
Okay.
Questions from the board?
Well, you show outstanding judgment coming back home.
I know.
Have you gone to any of the meetings?
Yes,
or
I have.
You've met some of the members, okay.
I've been to the last ones. Mm-hmm.
It's been a very active committee that has
Very.
a lot of moving parts right now.
Yeah. And I came to the meeting that we had in December, November, and that's why I got excited about it, helping, get things set up for all the new developments and the things coming up in the spring, so.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you for
right.
raising your hand.
Thank you.
Tony?
No, just looking at your background, is there anything that drew you towards that committee? I mean, there's 100 committees that you can be involved in. What drove you towards, the water aspect, and is that any background, or is...
Well, coming from California, we don't have water.
Coming from where, I'm sorry?
California, we don't have enough water. And I am in real estate also, and I was just interested in making sure, with the Toll Brothers and the new developments coming in, that we're very careful about keeping everything so that there's water for the future as well as now. And it's just important, I think, for everyone. And monitoring neighbors, things like that with the water. It's a lot we all need to work with, and I'm not shy. And I did a lot of volunteer work at Stanford, so I'm used to that, and I think I'd enjoy it.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank you.
putting your hand in the ring.
Just a comment, should be a great candidate, I think. And I was going to ask the same thing, coming from California. This is a big issue of this.
I'm not going back.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you
thank you.
very much.
Thanks.
And now, Mr. Finney, if you could come down? Same thing, you heard the questions.
I did, yes.
We might have a few more, but that's
I can
okay.
answer all those. So my name's Kevin Finney. I live at 32 Hazel Avenue, right by the harbor. Been in Scituate for about 8.5 years. And when I first moved to Massachusetts, I was moved right after college in 1993, lived in Boston for many years before I moved down here 8.5 years ago, and got a master's in public administration from Northeastern. But while I was doing that, I took a job in the asset management business and kind of forgot what I wanted to be when I grew up and kind of got sidetracked by a ways. So thinking about kind of different things I want to do as I continue to put roots down in this town, and was thinking about kind of some of the different committees, and obviously seeing the water situation. You read quite a bit about it, impacted quite a bit by it. And I guess when I was driving down Tilden Road about a few weeks ago and saw all those trees gone, I hadn't been down that road in quite a couple of weeks, realized just, wow, this is all happening really fast, and felt like I wanted to try and get involved. So I have not been to any of the meetings yet. It was kind of an aha moment when I drove down that road, and knowing that the problem's not, the issues aren't necessarily going away, but perhaps getting more challenging, and deciding to try and get more involved.
Questions?
Just a quick question. I mean, both candidates mentioned, development. What's your thought on the water impact on that development? Just curious.
Yeah, it's just really just the taxing on the resources of the town in general, and the size of that development, and some of the issues that some of the water resources issues that we're facing right now, and what the size of that development's going to mean, and just some of the issues going forward. I guess one of the other things I meant to mention is I work for an asset management company now. One of our affiliates is actually a socially responsible manager that we started working with about 3 or 4 years ago, and they're doing an awful lot around water and water rights, mainly globally. But it's just something that's becoming a lot more interesting, not just in Scituate, but everywhere. California, obviously. Yeah.
And it's a very, fine thought and thing. I just want the people to know that we're not building that development, and it's not going to make water available to the citizens. That it doesn't work like that. We do have a water supply that can do it, and nothing's in jeopardy there. But it is something that has to be considered and looked into, and but water from many different areas and just development. We've got brownwater issues. We've got distribution issues. We've got, plant issues and all these other things, as opposed to, monitoring development and the use of our water. We've got to find other water uses, water sources. So it's a very robust committee. I mean, they've come back, and we've got they're pretty on top of it in terms of all the bylaws they've put in place, and the regulations and the stuff that we do in this town in terms of water supply are pretty advanced, I think, compared to other communities. So it's great to learn a lot, but I just want you to know that it's much broader than just a new development coming in a part of town. It's very interesting, and there's a lot going on, and you'll learn a lot. I learn a lot every time they come and talk to us. So thanks for getting involved.
Great. Sean?
I was just going to ask how many openings are on the committee, and 3. Okay, we have 2. Okay.
We have 3, because we had 1 interview from last.
All right. Okay. And time commitment, you're able to meet at one of their meetings? I'm not liaison, but
It's once a month, like most meetings, but then they do some work in between.
Yeah, I should be able to. Yep.
all right. That was all. And thank you.
Good. Kevin, thank you very much. We'll be voting tonight.
Yes.
Later on, so. You're welcome to stay, both of you, or anybody else here, or go back.
We have a member from the committee. Does he want to add anything?
I don't know why he would, because we're interviewing him. Not him,
all right.
that's all. But other than that. All right, so let's move on to the next, which is, what do we have here?
Nope, sorry, I just clicked past
Mm.
it.
I know Kathy Cerruti's here for committee aggregate. I'm not sure if you're the first.
Yes.
Yes, you are. Kathy, come on down.
Come on.
Come on, for right community choice application.
How are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good, good.
Good. So I can give you a little, good.
So, I know you. and you'd be perfect for it. So I'd just explain to my board members why you think
I have notes.
you would be good.
Yeah.
So,
So I'm Kathy Cerruti. I live at 65 Brook Street. I've been a resident for 24 years now. And I have decades, I guess, of interest in green energy. I helped educate the town and promote the passing of Scituate Wind way back. Personally, I opt for green energy through National Grid, which is, I believe, called Green Energy Consumer Alliance. And truth be told, it's a very expensive option. Personally, I'd love to see a more economical green offering through the town. I think that'd be great. I'd also like to see more people take advantage of a more economical green choice. So I think all of that can be accomplished through community choice aggregation. And I helped gather signatures for it. That was fun. Just occupation-wise, I'm the school librarian at Cohasset Middle High School, and I teach research, so I'm not afraid of research and analysis. I went to an engineering college, so I'm not afraid of science and math. And currently I'm a graduate student working on my second master's in library media studies, and my first one was in science education. And certified to teach physics and instructional technology and library science. So that's what I would bring to the committee.
yeah, my vote.
Is that
I
all?
wonder why.
That's wonderful.
Anybody else? Questions?
No, thank you.
No, it seems like you've got the background, and you've done work on these projects before. You know, the committee, what did we decide? Is it 5 or 7?
7.
Or we haven't,
The committee will be appointed by the town administrator in charge.
right? But the size is 5 or 7, and, you know, the only thing that I asked is that we got a diverse group of people there that are going to come at it from different perspectives, and
With everyone's interest in mind.
yeah, everyone, yeah, and, you
Open mind about
know,
Yep.
you don't want 7 people on there that are all gung-ho, this is great, let's do it, you know, you
agree.
just got to have some, toss it around and come up with, you know, we all agree in the initiative, and I think you're knowledgeable about it, I think you'd be a good asset to the committee, so.
Cool. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, thank you. Appreciate it. I don't see Jerry Kelly. So I'm not sure if Jerry's here, but we know Jerry. And is Scott Greenbaum. I think we know Scott.
Scott Greenbaum, 40 Damon Road. Hi, John, Tony, Sean. Karen, I haven't met you. I do know the other 3 selectmen fairly well. As you know, I am a little glutton for a little bit of punishment. This will be my 3rd committee. I've been with Sean for the last 5 years in the middle school. Before that, I spent 5 years on the Conservation Commission. This is my business, professional business, is energy conservation, purchasing power for all types of facilities. I'm very familiar. I want to offer my professional knowledge to the town on this issue. I have a friend, she put together the first one in the state for Winchester, Melrose, and I don't know the other 5 towns in that area. So I have some resources of people who have done this. Hopefully this will work out. Not all of them work for everybody. I think there are a lot of advantages to this community aggregation for the town, especially for any of our people who have been slammed on their bills, which typically are the elderly, because it does give them an automatic out. As far as I understand, these programs are opt-out, not opt-in, so the town, you have to actively want to get out of it. And I want to see, obviously, the best alternative energy process that is cost-effective for the residents. We don't want to price anybody out. And that's what I can offer. Any questions?
You got my vote.
Thanks, John.
You're
So
influencing
the
the
problem
board.
right now is, we don't get the vote on it.
We don't vote.
And that's why everybody gets my vote. Town administrator's gonna, but that's why, apparently, I wasn't here for the last meeting, but we're interviewing anybody anyway, so I think it's important.
I'll just say one thing about Scott. He is that guy that Tony just described. He'll be at the middle school building a meeting, and he doesn't care if he's one of, in the 15 or against him, he doesn't care. If something's on his mind, he's gonna speak, and everyone's gonna know it.
Done that at town meeting a few times.
Yes, even against you.
Tony?
No, it's great to have the resources that you just said you had, you know, in the industry knowledge. You know, we want what's best for the community. We want to give green energy options at the best price. So it seems like you've got the skill set that can help us get there.
Karen?
Yeah, no, I just want a general comment on the depth of expertise that have raised their hand to help with this initiative. We're really lucky. And I think Jim's going to be in good shape for picking a good group to go forward. Good luck, Jim.
So I think, Jim, what's your time frame for trying to get the committee together?
It's the last day of interview, so notify people at the end of the week and have it as soon as possible.
Great.
All right, thank
Scott,
you.
thank you. Kathy, thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, thank you. Good. All right, so let's move on to the next, which is Kevin Cafferty, DPW Director. We're going to be having a discussion, a vote on the mass pavement contract for Roach Field parking lot.
That's scheduled, too. Well done, John.
Dan, why don't you come on up? Dan Fennelly, why don't you come on up? You've been actively involved in this from the beginning. I don't want these two to take the credit for it.
There should be like a bell to ring.
All right, so this is just a contract for the pavement. Is this for both sides of it, both the, where the present parking lot is, as well as the soon-to-be-built parking lot where the thing is? Perfect.
Correct. This contract would be for the construction. Last fall, we awarded the contract for design services.
Yes.
Went through the permitting with the planning board. And last month, we put out the construction bid attached to the submittal, or the prices that we received. Quite a few contractors bid on this project, which is good to see.
That's good.
Hopefully for the early bid submission. We received 8 contracted bids, and mass pavement reclamation came in at $94,256.85 for construction of refurbishing the front parking area and a new parking area in the right outfield, and then relocating the barricades in the outfield to left field.
They're good, mass paving reclamation, I guess.
They've done some
I
other
know
work
the
in
cheapest,
town
but
for
they're
us,
good
yes,
then.
They did the sidewalk on Tilden Road, they did grading at Piggity Beach a couple times.
Did we have problems with the sidewalk on Tilden Road? Finishing it, or
I just did it.
between the
couple weeks
poles?
ago.
They did, okay.
No, the
Country Way.
Green Stock Countryway.
No, I was thinking Tilden, I didn't think they finished, it took a while for them, but I'm only asking because we just want it done right, so it's, you know, if it means we're under the contract, which was how much? What was the contract amount?
94,000.
Oh, it was 94,000, so it's above by about $200. All right. All right.
What was our engineer's estimate? 95?
I thought it was over 100.
Was that, I'm sorry, what was the question?
The engineer's estimate, Dan?
Well, we
Or did we change it?
We budgeted about 145.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel where he's at 94, the next one is, 118, and those are both a little low, but after that it's 140. He didn't miss anything, did he?
I talked to him today before he was left. He was here for another bid, both about schedule and his quote.
Okay.
And he was comfortable with it. He likes working local. They are out of Hanover.
Right.
And it's gravel. There's no pavement. It's some site work.
Mm-hmm.
The stormwater, swale at the back, and some grading. That's what I think they originally did in town, was grading
Yeah.
the gravel roads and parking lots in town. Michael Gallant.
All right, just so long, that's all I want. Just make sure that they can do it for the price, and we're not gonna.
Construction as
yeah.
well while they're out there. Yeah.
Any questions from the board? No? Motion then?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. Move the Board of Selectmen award the contract for construction services for Roachfield parking improvement to Mass Pavement Reclamation for $94,256.85.
Second.
Motion by Mr.
Vignani?
Vignani, seconded by Ms. Canfield, not Ms. Curran. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Dan, thank you. We're finally getting going.
Yeah, I just
When
wanna-
can they get started on this?
And so on.
Can they get started on it? When are they gonna do it? Like April?
Melts?
Like,
Everything melts?
Yeah, we're hoping to get the front lot done first before April 15th.
beautiful.
When practices start, and then they can take their time back. But, yeah, they were ready to go this morning when I talked to them, as soon as we get everything in order.
Right. Well, Dan's worked on this for over 2 years, right?
3 years, yeah.
3 years. It's going to be a great improvement to that field, and we've taken some thoughts of other fields to have, we have people sit in the outfield and watch the games from that perspective as well. And I think it's going to be a real improvement to that field and really,
Yeah, it's gonna be
you know,
nice.
It'll solve a safety issue and the issue with the neighborhood,
Right.
access to the neighborhood too. I think is good.
Thanks for
Dan,
sticking with it.
thank you.
Thank you, Dan, appreciate it.
Let's get on to the discussion vote of Laminar Construction Heavy Equipment Contract. And this is basically a contract to provide heavy equipment to the town of Scituate, I guess for a skid steer loader, excavator, a six-wheel dump truck, small crew, I guess must be a
Small crew and a large crew. And
large
this
crew.
is kind of a housekeeping measure, this bid last year, and the thought was it was gonna be under. When we came in for the heavy highway bid, somehow Laminar was missed, so we never added it to the contract it was never approved, I guess, by you. For some reason, we thought it was, but it was never voted on by the board.
Okay.
how did the rates compare to last year?
The rates are the same, he's not raising or increasing the rates.
Sean, you're the,
Yeah, who is this?
Leo Costello?
Leo Costello.
Oh, jeez.
You know that guy?
Yeah, all right, okay, all right.
All right,
Good.
motion?
move the Board of Selectmen award the contract to provide heavy equipment rental to the town of Scituate to Laminar Construction.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
And then the last one you have is actually, it's not a vote, but it's a water update. I see the gentlemen are here. Sean Anderson, our superintendent, come on up. Come on up, everybody come on up.
Right?
Sean Anderson, obviously, Ryan and Mike from Ty and Bond. They were here for the previous meeting we had with some residents, so we brought them along for the water update. So I'll read a little sheet, give you an update where we are with everything and what's happening, and then we can take questions and answers afterwards, if that works out for everybody. The water system's been running with the bypass system from well 17A. The water is being pumped to the water treatment plant and treated with the temporary green sand filter, which we've had great success in removing the manganese from the water. The town's been using about 1.2 million gallons per day, with 370,000 gallons of that coming from well 17A.
I'm sorry, say that again, how many gallons?
370,000 gallons coming
Per
from
day.
well 17A.
1.2 a day.
1.2 a day. We've noticed that we have been using more water over the past couple of weeks with the temperature drops. We think we have miscellaneous freeze-ups in houses. If they're summer houses, sometimes, a meter can freeze or a pipe can freeze. And we're also just monitoring the system for any leaks that might be due to frost heaves.
So you think there are leaks in the system that's causing
We're using
excess
some
water?
extra water. There is some potential for some leaks right now. Yes, we haven't found them yet or haven't seen where they are. We did have an issue back about a week ago. We lost power to two of the wells, 10 and 11, and they were out all night. Something happened, there was a surge, so the alarm never went off. We came in, the water was down in the tank, and get everything running again. But that was, what night was that? That was, which storm? Do you remember?
That was the windy storm.
When we had the really high winds
Yeah.
a
Oh,
couple
yeah.
weeks ago. Yep.
So Kevin, in order for a water leak to to be noticeable in that's got to be more than a house or two, right?
What we're talking probably about 50 to 100 gallons a minute. It could be one leak, or it could be 3 or 4 smaller leaks. We've had a lot of, as Kevin said, houses that we've gotten called to. Most of the ones recently have been ones that are under construction, the building permit on the front, or, construction permit on the front, and people just forgot to shut the water off. So we don't know about it, we don't get called until water starts either coming out the front door or out the windows. Then we show up and we shut it off.
But Sean, that's what you're surmising. We don't know that for a fact.
We
right?
don't know that for a fact.
Okay.
No.
We just know
have
that-
some leaks
We
underground,
just know
we
that there's
haven't
excess,
said.
there's water that's being used, and
50 gallons an hour, right? 50 gallons of what?
50 gallons a minute,
50 gallons a minute.
50 to 100 gallons a minute. Yeah.
50 to 100 gallons a minute.
We originally, when we started 17A, emergency treatment online, we were pumping about 230 gallons per minute from that well. And the rest of our wells were just at normal production. The tanks, we were able to keep the tanks completely full, and we were able to shut down. We actually had to, after we backwashed the vessels, we would keep it offline for 3 to 4 hours to let the tanks drop. Right now, as soon as we're finished backwashing, we're putting it right back online again. We've increased from 230 gallons a minute to 280 gallons a minute from that well, and we've also turned up our other wells. Now, the good news is we're keeping up with demand, but I'm pretty much maxed out with those right now. So I know we've had some increases.
So, that's 150,000 gallons a day. How do we notify the public to start looking for this in case there is a major, I remember the houses over
on
Marion, Ocean, or wherever.
Marion Road in their Oceanside.
Yeah.
Guy was.
Do you have any idea what area of town it is? Is there any way to identify?
The distribution guys are really good at looking at the most frequent flyers, so to speak, the areas that are most prone to having leaks. They've blanketed those. Kevin was good the other day. He went on the radio and notified all personnel who were in trucks to keep their eyes out, keep their eyes peeled, let us know if they see anything. Unfortunately, if it is a leak underground, we have to wait till it does come to the surface. There's no-
Could be in sand.
Could be in
Then you'll
a
never have it.
snow.
Could you put flow meters like you did on the point for wastewater? Could you put flow meters in the middle of the night to determine?
We could employ some leak detection services. It would be costly, and it would be pretty tough to pinpoint.
Okay.
I know this is not germane for now, but it could be in the future. I know, like, City of Quincy, their pipe breaks. They get a call within the day saying your pipe's broken because they know it. They can pinpoint it. What kind of technology would you need in the future for something like that? I don't know if you, I know that because a client of mine called me. He said they called me right up. He lives here in town. He had an apartment.
That's the meter system. The meter system, their setup identifies it that there's a leak, they're using additional water.
Right. Is that something that we can think about in the
Our new smart
future?
meters that we're installing, if we have one of our newer meters in a meter pit, and we read that, and we read them quarterly, so it's, it'll take 3 months for us to catch it, but it will tell us if there's constant usage. It'll flag it, saying that there's a leak, it's running constantly, and then we notify the customer, we send somebody out.
So,
We only give them so long to fix it.
so there's no way that we can identify the region that it's happening in? You just said you have some, but you didn't say, yes, we know it's in
No,
Sand Hills, or we know.
It's not that easy. I am working my way to be able to do that a little bit better in the future. I'm working on, I put in a flow meter that it never had one before. The man-lot booster station never had a flow meter. I installed a flow meter there, but this is the first year that we're getting a baseline for what usage is. That way, in the future years, I'd be able to look back and say, how much were we using last year? What are we using, this month? Seems like it's high. Let's focus on that area. Same for Walnut Tree. That's another area that's a boosted area. But for the general area of Scituate, most of the residents, it's very hard to find the leaks until they come to the surface.
Maybe we should put something on Facebook for people to get more eyes out there, just to be aware.
To do that?
Sorry, we interrupted, so.
No, not at all. And my place where I left off. Ice pigging. We've been working with the contractor to do the ice pigging. We had a meeting with Suez, the contractor that does that work, on 2/7. At the last special town meeting, $200,000 was allocated. So we've kind of worked with them and negotiated with them, and that'll give us 15 days of ice pigging that we're looking to start and do between April and June, probably in the mid-April to early May that we'd get that work done, which is great. The new position, the assistant water superintendent, has not been filled yet. We had some candidates, didn't work out, but we're still looking for that position. Also want to mention flushing. After the ice pigging, the town would look to do some flushing in some different areas also. Town meeting, the water department has put in funding requests for engineering design at the water treatment plant and the SCADA system, and additional funds for ice pigging, Humrock Water main design, the new treatment at well 17A, and the mini excavator. The plant repairs, setting up the bypass system is functioning. As we talked about, it's been working. The water from well 17A supplying the 370,000 gallons per day. The sedimentation basins have been drained and the sediment removed. We're currently pressure washing them. We will have a structural engineer from Ty and Bond out tomorrow to start inspecting the first sedimentation basin. The next sedimentation basin, as they finish the pressure washing, will either be Friday or Monday. And then we'll have the evaluation of what we have to do to fix whatever damage is down there. Track vac replacement is scheduled for mid to late March. We have to do all the structural repairs, have them complete and everything pulled out in order to do the track vac installation. The sand filter has been completely replaced. That's all set and ready to go. The chemical tanks are under construction now. The green sand filtration system at well 18, which is the one over by the golf course, showed a great manganese removal level. So the manganese was coming out of the raw water at 0.6 parts per million. After it runs through the green sand filter, it's coming out at 0.03 parts per million. So it's a very significant removal, and this is going to be part of the permanent system. As this is done, we will maintain that system and keep it there, so that well will be treated.
Give those numbers again. It says 0.6?
0.6, and right now it's a
0.03?
0.6, and it brings it down to 0.03. It brought it down to 0.03.
So is 0.6 mean 0.6%? What does that mean?
Parts per million, so
Parts per million.
milligrams per liter.
So 6 parts per million, that's what that means?
What's the threshold, Sean, you told me today?
0.3 or 3 parts per million is the
So,
threshold.
by being at point, I thought we were 0.02, but 0.02, 0.03, we're way under.
Yeah.
So then we're gonna be,
That's not fully optimized yet. That number will get even better.
So 0.3 is the
Threshold?
minimal threshold, and we're at 0.03.
Correct.
Hey.
What's the volume from that well?
But you're
That one is 150 gallons per minute, about 215,000 gallons a day.
Great.
That's great.
So that's something that we wanted to have in our pocket for this type of scenario I'm in right now.
Yeah.
We're keeping up with demand. I can still turn some of our wells up, should we need a little bit more water.
You got it.
If it goes beyond that, I'm going to be reaching out to DEP. I took some samples from that well today, some official samples, to send to the lab, so that I can turn to DEP and say, I'd like to put this source online. These are my sample results. I'll pilot the system in, pumping into the system.
Good.
I'll do my pilot study. So,
That's good news.
That's actually great news, because we didn't run that well at all last year.
Right.
We ran it the year before, and we ran it near the drought, but it's still, it does have a lot, it does come out with a lot of manganese, which is blended, and it was in
the criteria. It's not something that we were doing, how can I say, we're meeting the requirements, but getting this all cleaned up at that well is a huge boost for the water department and for water quality, because that typically goes right down Front Street, that water. So we're very excited about that. To continue on, pipe replacement, we went out to bid for Phase 3C. We're looking at the low bidder now and checking references. The project includes new pipe on Oceanside Drive, about 3,300 feet of it, and abandoning a bunch of pipe that we have 2 pipes in the roadway, like on Booth Hill Road, Gannett Road, Turner Road, Manlot Road, and Ocean Ave.
Can you say who the low bidder is yet, or no? Would you rather not?
We're not sure who the low bidder is. We know who the low bidders are, but we're looking at their references before we approve them. So I'll probably be at the next meeting awarding that contract.
Good.
The Dolan Well Field, the application to DEP was submitted February 9th, 2019. DEP has 98 days to reply, so we're expecting a reply May 15th to tell us which direction we can go in. But so far, everything looked positive on that in the water quality, as well as the quantity of water looked pretty good.
It does. That's excellent. Good.
So, and that's a well, it's a different type of well. It's an actual well field where there's multiple heads, and takes the water that's down, it's not down to 90 feet, it might be 40 feet, and it takes that water, but when that water is available would be like June, July, and August, which is when we need our water the most. So if that works out, that'll be a good thing. And then we are putting the final touches on our complete water study and getting the RFP out and drafted. I've been working with the Water Resources Commission, as well as working with the Planning Board in getting that squared away. So we've taken comments from both, and that's just about ready to go out. So that's it. The work we're doing at the treatment plant, the updates in everything that we're doing, the plant really hasn't had a major upgrade in 30 years. So Sean came out today, he got the grand tour and saw there's a lot of stuff going on out there.
Thank you, Sean,
it's
for coming
interesting.
out, and you're all welcome anytime to come by.
This week I want to. I was trying to go last Friday, but I'm going to try to see maybe this Friday. I'd like to see it.
You need an hour or two. It's not 5 minutes. It's
No,
pretty
no,
cool.
I want to go
Yes.
through the whole thing and see the grain sand filter, and then also try to make sure if there's any information on the sand filter up on Tack Factory. That's going to be great, because that'll, how much is coming, how much are we,
Per minute for 330 gallons per minute.
how much is coming out from the green sand filter for 17A? You've got a .03 at 18A. I was curious.
215, did he say?
What's the
The
manganese
removal
level?
rate.
Our lab is a .02.
102.
Yeah.
That's great for 17A.
Yeah.
And that's temporary. When we get,
That's temporary.
so if we get the main system in, maintain that hopefully.
But still keep in mind, if I walked away recalling one thing, this is still a single stream facility.
Yeah.
How nice would it be to have duplicate, double, triple? So it's something to think about for down the road.
Well, I think we're going to talk about it right now. Right? That's what the proposal is in the budget, the $4 million plan
To build a new plant.
to build a new plant.
It'd be like, all right, okay.
We'll get
All
there.
right.
Right, is that, I mean, I
Is that a
assume all of these
discussion
guys are
today?
here. Well,
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we want to bring Kevin in, because
Good.
Tony had questions about it at the last meeting, we talked about the capital, so.
Let's talk about it then.
Before we go on to that, can I just ask a couple of quick questions?
Yeah.
The mid-March for the track back, is that on the regular schedule? Was that, are we on target for schedule?
We're still within our target date. We've slipped a little bit. Part of the reason we slipped on our schedule, we had the problem getting kicked off.
Yeah.
When we slipped on our schedule, and when we slipped, because we pushed this out so far, when we slipped with the track vac, we had to take the week of the 25th, because
That's
that
when
was
they
the
were
next
available.
available week for the installers.
But that's not going to screw up the rest of the schedule?
That's the last
Should be telling.
bit, and that's the last bit of it, and, we're hoping it doesn't.
And-
But things have been going pretty good so far.
Okay, and do you have a estimate for when you think the RFP will be ready for the water study? Or is that?
Yeah,
What'd you say, Karen? When the what'll be ready?
RFP, sorry, I'm very stuffed up.
I've taken comments back from Becky and Steve Pritchett, and it's just the time sitting down, putting the two comments together. We sat down, we had a meeting last week, and we went through everything and made comments and notes.
Okay.
And they had a chance to review it, and it's just consolidating everything and
Okay.
getting it all squished together.
So
So
soon.
I'd hope to have it out mid-next week.
Okay, great.
All right, let's get to the water treatment plant.
Okay? Do you want to address this, or?
Well, I can go into some of it. In a recent meeting with DEP that we had, one of the big things that came up was our lack of redundancy at the surface water treatment plant. Even with these repairs that we're doing, our hands are still tied to the fact that we have one sand filter and one carbon filter. I think we might be the last one in the state to have that. Everybody has redundancy. And in that meeting, one of the people who works for the DEP came straight out and said, that's one of the things, the next time I visit you, Sean, is I want to hear that you have redundancy. I wanna
Our
hear that-
plans for redundancy.
Or plans for redundancy. And the last time I had a sanitary survey was my first year here from DEP. That's when you come around and check everything on us, make sure we're doing our jobs correctly. That was in 2016. My next one, unfortunately, is due this summer. So he will be coming to visit me, and he will be asking these questions about redundancy, or what our plans are to address the fact that we do not have redundancy. So that's one big flag with the existing plant. Another one is, as Kevin had mentioned, that the last upgrade was 30 years ago, so we are doing some fixes now, but they're not major, they're not improvements, we're just doing some maintenance, basically, to the plant. We have a structural engineer coming in because we do have access to assess points of concrete with weakness throughout the plant. They have noticed inside the sedimentation basins, cracks in the wall, at least 6 cracks in the wall, that when they finished power washing one basin and they got into the other basin, they noticed the cracks in the same spots. So it looks like we have cracks going right through the whole wall. These are things that hopefully can be cosmetic and fixed, so we can, return into service pretty easily. But it still goes to show to the age and to how much the concrete is deteriorating, because we have other spots that when they come down to do that assessment, we need to show them. I think Sean, having gone through today, can attest to how much it almost snowballs on you when you see just exactly how many things we have going on, and how many different things we need to address. Another one is our residuals management. That's our sludge or our sediment. One of the reasons we kind of slipped on our schedule was it was really hard to find a place, any wastewater treatment plants that would accept our water from our sed basins. Just by its own characteristics, it's very low in pH, and they don't like that. They don't like to accept water that's very low in pH. And it has high alum levels in it because that's what we use as our coagulant. So it's something that we've had an agreement for a long time, and it was designed this way, that we very slowly send it to Will over at Sewer, and he handles it at 10 gallons a minute off hours. We program SCADA to send it over off hours. The drawback to that, or the problem with that, is every summer when we hit our peak demand, he reaches a point where he can't take it anymore. And he says, Sean, I just can't do it. You need to shut down sending it to me, and we have to switch and start discharging to our lagoon, which is pretty much maxed out at this point. We were able to do it this past summer for about 2 weeks to take the burden off of Will in the sewer plant, but we need a more viable long-term solution. and expanding our existing facility isn't a viable option, because we have nowhere to put our residuals from treating the water.
That's that lagoon out back, you guys, when you go out back to the plant.
Sewer?
Next to the baseball field.
On your way
Oh,
to.
right behind the,
I don't know if you pass it, go to the baseball, or go past the baseball field, turn right, and it's on your left. It's relatively small, and then, and as Eric was saying, we talk about a centrifuge to really correct that problem and separate the water from the solids, which would become sludge.
A lot of newer plants, even down in wastewater, they do what you take your residuals and you do just that. You remove as much water as you can from it. You can return that to your plant because that's easily treated again. And then the solids you usually dispose of in a landfill.
Same as the wastewater treatment plant, that's what we saw, I think it's trucked out by truck. Or could be possibly landfill cover or something like that out of this plant.
we can't pump it to our sewer treatment plant?
As I said, they're having difficulties in the summer keeping up with.
We actually do,
We do that now,
you were talking
yeah.
about, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Talking about, sustainability in the future, what we're going to do. We're already bumping into problems with what we have existing. So that's a little bit of what I.
So what we did is, we put in a request, Sean put his capital in, and he put in a request, a placeholder for $4 million. The idea is, we are going to get results back from Ty and Bond that make a suggestion of what should be done to the water treatment plant. And that's going to be, do we build another building with a complete, not a complete line of filter, so you can take one off, put one on. They're also going to do the evaluation. Part of the evaluation with the structural engineer is our plant viable to continue? Could we make improvements? Could we make upgrades? Where would we go in the future with that? So the idea is to be set up for that so that we could go forward with that. And before anything would be decided, we would be back into the Selectmen and explaining where we are and, looking at an RFP to award an engineering contract and give the results for that. The idea was to keep moving and going forward, which we had brought up before, bless you,
Thank you.
to capital advisory in the Board of Selectmen when we presented this.
They asked about grant money, and it's, would just be one of, and it would be like any other community looking to upgrade, so.
So on that same thing, on the water, we did go for SRF funding, which is the low-interest loans from the state, for the new treatment at well 17A. And we did get that. So something else we would do is we would probably, we would go after the same thing and try to get SRF funding for anything, whatever we wound up doing, whatever the suggestions are from the engineering study going forward. So we don't have that now, but we did put the placeholder in so that we could keep moving forward.
So what's the $4 million being spent on?
Right now, nothing.
No,
We
but
would
if
use
you-
it. We would use it for either designing a new plant, if that was a call, or designing a new filter system and upgrading whatever we had to the existing treatment plant.
So the next step is to have a study done?
Study's already underway.
Okay.
And part of that study is the structural analysis also that's going on tomorrow and probably Monday.
And how are we paying for that? Has that already been allocated?
Yes.
It has, okay. I mean, from my perspective, I just learned 2 or 3 things right now that I didn't know anything about, right? So I don't know if you guys knew all the problems that we're having with the water treatment plant to the level that we can't get our sludge out of there, and we can't, we just learned about redundancy being a problem about 2 months ago. So it's all kind of fresh, and it's a very big expenditure, right? A $4 million design, what was it, $50 million for a plant or something? Is that what you estimated, Jim?
40 to 50, yeah.
Yeah. So our water rates are going through the roof right now just to put our fingers in the holes that we have going on now. If we add a $50 million capital, or $55 million capital expenditure to this, our water rates are going to be the highest in the state. So that's just my concern in terms of, have we vetted every possible interest? Have we we've never had redundancy before. The first I've heard of was 5 minutes ago when you said the state actually said that we have to act on it. Never knew that. So this is all kind of happening very quickly for a very big expenditure that's going to take our water rates and really escalate them. Because we already, regardless of what we do there, we're still on the same track where our water rates are going to go up anyways, because we're still going to have brown water, and we still have infrastructure pipe problems. So this deals nothing with any of that. So that was my concern at the last meeting, that I'm just in the dark of where we are, and when all of a sudden there's a $4 million item that doesn't even build anything, it's just designing something, well, that's a red flag. So, and I don't know what the board thinks, but it's
Again,
gonna.
it's a hard, Mike had brought up earlier that it's hard to give an update to you folks, and it's a lot of information. A visual is a big, it would be a big thing here. Coming down and seeing the plant would be big, because you get an idea of the totality of it all. I guess I could get better about bringing some visuals, or trying to put together some visuals, or some goals for the department in terms of, milestones.
Well, I'm not blaming you. I was at the plant,
Yeah.
3 years ago and did the tour. And, but all of a sudden to be at the point we are right now without me at least having a clue about it is just a little bit, well, let's tap the brakes, see what we have to do, because this is going to be a big decision. It's a huge expenditure. And we used to have remember we had the lowest water rates on the South Shore 10 years ago, and we're quickly going up to the highest without even putting this plant in. So I just want to make sure it's vetted out. I'm not saying we don't need it, but what other options do we have? These green sand filters seem to be working great off-site at the wells. Is that an option for redundancy as opposed to building a new plant? I don't know, and I'm not a water person, so maybe this report that you guys are doing are going to shed some light on us in terms of directional paths that we have, but I'd like to see options 1 through 5 before we make a decision. This is where I'm coming from.
I have a couple of comments and a question. So when the first time I toured the plant 2 years ago, there was already conversation about the problem of redundancy and the difficulties in the plant. So I don't know if it's been officially before the board, but it's definitely been, it's not a surprise. It's not new news. My question is, if DEP has flagged this as a concern for them, and they come back this summer and there isn't a plan to address redundancy, what are their measures? What measures can they take?
They could direct us to do something about it.
Take an administrative consent order, they call it.
Yeah.
I've already heard
They probably don't.
rumblings of it from them, that sort of unofficially to prepare for it, that's probably coming our direction after all this.
And
because they see what we've had to do here in order to just do some maintenance at our plant. We've had to jump through a lot of hoops. You'd agree, you know what I mean, doing 17A emergency treatment. And so when all is said and done, I'm pretty much expecting an administrative consent order, which is just going to be basically the DEP is saying that, we see these problems ahead of you, and we'd like to know what you're going to do about it, and they're going to give us a time frame to respond.
Is this
usually what that is?
Is this answering that? What you're getting for $4 million?
They're happy to hear that this is what we're doing. When I'm in touch with DEP and I explain what we're doing, they're happy to hear that we're on the ground running right now.
But that's not $4 million.
No, that's just a study.
Yeah. They're just doing the study.
Yeah.
Right, so we're making progress to answer the question. But, so other than the Clean Water Trust, there's no relief to offset the costs of having to do a redundant system?
Not that you guys know of anything?
The one element, and I also want to point out that if you remember back, 4 months ago, when we talked about the rates, that you have we have a financial model prepared that funds a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And so my concept there is just consider it on a continuum. So we continue to check in, how did last year go, and then readjust and look forward so that you're not surprised. And that's the whole purpose of looking at 10 years. But in the other part of that is, looking at sort of growth-related capital and what's happening in your system. You can look at that a little harder in terms of what's coming in, new development, renovation, that kind of thing. I know there was some talk at some point about some big projects happening, so that's the kind of thing you can look at as well for revenue sources. The concept is growth funds growth, growth pays for growth.
So,
But other than free money, no. Everybody's looking for it, everybody asks about it. And trust me, every consultant internally, when some new, free money source comes out, the emails go out and we start calling people.
So let me ask you this, there's yet again another issue with money with the water, and that is the replacement of the other pipes, which are 58 miles worth of AC pipes, which at some point, they're going to face their useful life. Some of them already have, and that's an ongoing issue. So on top of a water treatment plant, we've got distribution issues still. Obviously, I've known about the redundancy issue and the issue of what do we do? Do we fix this, and is there some way, or do we do a whole new plant? And I guess to Tony's point, I guess we really need to have an idea. I realize that the problem with the idea is that, if we're going to have a new plant, well, that's assuming that we're going to be putting a lot of water through the water treatment plant, as opposed to doing it at the source, which would be the wells. Or do we do more at the wells and then just maintain the reservoir that we have, which may mean that we don't necessarily need a brand-new plant, but we do want the redundancy available, which is a cheaper cost potentially. Which is why I keep saying, is there another potential to go to that other area for another reservoir, which means that you could utilize maybe a second reservoir in the future, but that means you're going to need to have a larger plant. And I know we haven't even gone to that point, but I'm like, so I think what that means, at least in my mind, is we kind of really need to have like a really logical, long-term plan, short-term plan of this is what we're looking at. Because even with the $4 million to suggest this, we're not even sure whether we want a larger plant or whether we want to add the redundancy just to tack on. And I think a lot of that depended, I thought, what I was under the impression was whether or not the wells are going to yield and also be, cost-effective with the sand filters. Because obviously the sand filter on 17A is, I forgot, was it 8 million? We're looking at what, 8 million.
Yeah. 8 million.
Yeah.
So these numbers begin to to Tony's point, kind of think we need to know exactly what are we going to do. 8 million here, or is it better to say no, put it into a 50 or 40 or $35 million water treatment plant, because we don't need to, we can process it through the plant, right? As opposed to the sand filters. Maybe, maybe not.
Different water, different issues.
Okay, surface water versus well water. I got you, so you can't. Well, then they get into a situation with the Dolan Field. Is that a great, source? And can we find another aquifer in the west end? Or I guess maybe not. Maybe it's the same. And would that be more cost effective than to go through a 40 or $50 million water treatment plant? I guess what I'm saying is I think we really need to have an idea, because I'm all supportive of the water treatment plant. I have yet to see it. I want to see it. But after going what we talked about last August, September, the whole fall, it's a problem there. It's a problem that you didn't create. But so something has to happen there. And it would make sense to have redundancy, because right now we had to take the whole plant offline to fix it, and you shouldn't be doing that. It doesn't make any sense, because we can't use our reservoir right now, the water. So I get that. But I do think we need to have a plan of what exactly we're looking at, short-term, long-term, because I don't want to hear, people don't want to hear, oh, gee, all the AC pipes falling in, we got to replace it now, because sooner or later, we are hitting that useful life. 60 years, 70 years, it's not going to last another 30, or we'll be back in the hole. cast iron pipe situation. So those are my thoughts on it. Sean? Aaron?
I have more questions now than I did earlier. Thanks, so.
This is cherry conversation.
No,
It's sobering because, I mean, we haven't even talked about the, what do you call them, the tanks, the
storage tanks.
storage tanks, which is an issue that needs to be dealt with, which helps with our pressure.
Part of
Yeah.
what will be addressed in the water study.
Yeah.
It'll cover and be all-inclusive on directions.
So should we have the water study to really kind of dictate and tell us what our needs are? I know, Sean, you want to be able to have 4 million to be able to go back to DEP and say, look, we are looking at the redundancy with our plant. We're not sure which way we're going to go, but you feel that's important for where our water department is for
I do,
purposes of
Whether,
accreditation and everything.
when the report comes back that it's cost-effective to do some renovations to the existing, or to build something new. I know that when I spoke with my contacts at DEP, they were happy to hear that I had that, placeholder for this annual meeting, and that I had money set aside, or I was putting money aside for a green sand filter plant as well.
Mhm.
They feel we're being proactive, what they like to see.
Yeah, I think by April 8th, we're going to have to be very clear on how to articulate that this is a placeholder for that analysis, because the way it looks here is like, okay, we're going to design, like Tony said, it looks like, okay, we're going to design a new plant. If that's not decided until we've gone further, we have to be really clear about articulating that so people know what it is that the plan is. You know what I mean?
Right, and some of the other things that Sean didn't mention, maybe I didn't mention either, is it also includes skater upgrades.
Right.
For right now, we don't necessarily know what's going on in the system in certain areas. The skater allows it electronically to monitor, and if you want to get into that
Yep.
a little more.
Basically, since we took the surface water treatment plant offline, but on pins and needles ever since we did that. I have an alarm that will go out, a general alarm if we get a low tank alarm, and I have a general alarm for the emergency treatment at 17 if anything goes wrong with that. But most places, most people who have come here, DEP included, don't know of any other public water supplies that don't have SCADA yet. SCADA would allow me from home after dinner, say, just to log in and take a look and see what my tank height is, to see that 17's running normally, to see that all the wells are running. The night that one of our wells shut down and we never got an alarm, SCADA gives you those alarms. And, it gives you peace of mind in my position to, before I go to bed at night, to check in and to be able to say, okay, the tank's are almost full, we're in good shape. It would allow me to sleep better at night. It's, it's something that is expensive initially, but it allows you to see everything that's going on in your system.
Well, given the current status of our water system, it's probably better to have that now. If everything was fine with plenty of supply and source, we probably wouldn't need it necessarily, but knowing that it can be very tenuous makes sense.
Instead of getting a general alarm, you have to drive to find out what happened.
Yeah.
You could look and get a good idea of what was happening and say, oh, that's just this, and
Right.
acknowledge it, or,
And my alarms are really kind of old school, solid state right now. SCADA would, in the position I'm in right now, I could tighten up my alarms. I could say, I don't want to wait until the tank drops 20 feet to get an alarm. I want to know as soon as I'm 10 feet down.
Mhm.
I want to start to act that.
Right.
And squeeze all those, numbers. I can change them, manipulate them depending on the situation I'm in currently.
And how
I'll tell
much
you what, it's a lot better doing it with SCADA than having the residents call up and say, yeah, the tank's overflowing again.
That works.
That does
So
happen.
how much of the force is dedicated to that work? Do you know?
That's a really good question. I knew you were going to ask that as I was coming in here, and I don't know the answer to that. Do you know ballpark?
I don't, I wouldn't be fair
Okay.
So you can get it
I
to
can
us.
get it
then.
done.
Yeah.
Get it to us, we know it.
I would say
By April 8th, we ought to know that for sure.
Yeah.
that from your perspective, you have a very complicated water system with a lot of pieces to it.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, if you feel like it's hard to keep up with it, it's because there's a lot to it. You know, half of your water comes from a surface water, the other half comes from wells, and not just one well, 5 wells, you know, there's just a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts to it.
Any other questions?
I don't do this time.
Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate it. I know it's getting later, but important discussion, so we have the answers, because we're going to be asked.
Well, in a couple of minutes, we're going to say whether we want to put $4 million.
On the,
Yeah.
on the warrant articles.
warrant.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I think we need the comprehensive plan, you know, that says, here's what we're doing from all these things, and skate is going to be part of it, and, you know, redundancy is going to be part of it, and, you know, distribution is going to be part of it. And I assume that's what you guys are coming up with options, right?
Right.
Yep.
So-
Yeah, we're working through the alternatives analysis right now, taking a look at the existing plant holistically, taking a look all the way from the structural aspects of the facility to the mechanical HVAC side of things, pretty much a soup to nuts kind of look to the whole facility. And then we're also taking a look at the alternative of looking at building a new surface water treatment facility too. So we're taking a look at the various alternatives here.
Right.
So-
And have you done this for other towns recently?
In terms of building a whole new surface water plant, that's pretty rare for Massachusetts towns to be looking at surface water plants right now. But we do have some other facilities that we have.
Why?
Wait, to your point, though, I mean, we do plenty of
We do,
evaluations where we look at, you know, sort of capital planning and asset management approach and that kind of thing. So, yeah, we do that,
Right.
you know, I don't say all the time, but there's not a lot of, you know, there's certainly not much new source development going on. So in your case, you're really building a whole new surface water plant. It's just most of them already exist and are just being rehabilitated and maintained.
Right. Yeah.
So is that why it's rare, because nobody's building one right now?
Because everyone's got theirs.
Because they're all built to the
They're
redundancy
all built
standards.
to redundancy.
Right, but I'm sure there's 300 and something towns here. I'm sure some of them are 50 years old like ours. I'm sure many of them are.
Joint Water is, Holbrook Randolph Joint Water is looking at a new plant right now. I know that.
That's right, yeah, that's an unusual, a new, from scratch treatment plant.
Was
I would imagine our plant is how old?
Randolph Joint Water Board?
The originals was 67, then
So,
some upgrades in
yeah.
88, 89.
Right, so there's many plants in the state that are hitting their level where concrete is becoming, you
There
know,
were two other plants that were built identical, almost identical to ours. I have a pamphlet, and there's one up at the treatment plant, and I have one in my office. I should forward it to all you folks. It's very interesting. It's an engineering firm designed this type of plant to work in the smallest footprint. That's why you're always constantly walking over the water. You're walking over the set basins, you're walking over the channels of the water. It's in a very small footprint, so they sold quite a few of them. None of those, or none of them in Massachusetts that I know of, are active. I've walked into a facility when I worked in the private sector and looked to my right, and there was a clear glass window, and I looked in the window, and what I saw is what we have for a treatment plant. It was just mothballed, and then the new treatment plant was in the back. They kept that online as long as they could, and then they built a new treatment plant behind it. Now they had the grounds to do so, but I found it interesting because I didn't realize it until I got here and saw the surface water treatment plant here, and it just rang a bell. I was like, I've seen this somewhere before. Where did I see it? I believe it was Somerset.
They have spare
parts? Yeah.
They have that whole glass wall thing.
Yeah, the glass wall, you see the exact same plant that we have, the sand filter and the carbon filter, just minus the medium. And it's like, wow, that's what we have.
It's a museum.
Yeah, it's a museum kind of.
All right, well,
One last.
yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry to take up more time. It's just from a safety aspect of our existing plant, we use chlorine gas. We're one of the last towns in Massachusetts to still use chlorine gas. It's highly volatile. We've had some safety training with the fire department and with the company that sells us the gas. Actually, I should say liquid chlorine. And if you notice the windsocks up above, the fire department will come and will assess if we ever have any kind of a major leak, which way the wind is blowing, and they will set up a perimeter. And then they'll wait for a hazmat team to show up. They won't do any kind of a rescue or any kind of a repair. They're not suited to do that. So there's an aspect of this in terms of most surface water treatment plants are way off in the woods, away from, say, a ball field or residential, neighbors. We don't have that luxury where we are right now. So it's just one thing to also.
Did you guys know that?
I knew that's why the socks were up there for chlorine, and that's, it's a hazard, yeah. I didn't know that until
One of the
last
other things,
September.
He's a bit of a stickler, but at DEP, he made me actually write up an emergency response plan on what we would do if somebody ever became unconscious inside the chlorine room. And that's it, you can't go in and get them. We're not allowed to go in. We don't have the equipment to go in, and unfortunately, the fire department doesn't either. And he wanted me to put that in writing to him. And I had to do that.
Well, it's a good reason to think about redesigning
That begs
it.
the question. Sorry, John.
We have.
It's enough for me to say
equipment that's on the
that
wall
makes sense.
from the
That's why
the
I don't go in the
80s
chlorine room.
That's supposed to be self-contained
You've
breathing
tried to get 'em in there a
apparatuses,
couple
but
times.
they're so old that the fire department pointed to them and said, do not ever put that on. They said, just call us, don't ever, we have equipment that's far newer than that.
I don't want to see that part of the plant.
Is that where we were with the
Skip that
tanks?
part of the tiller.
On the door.
Well, what are you doing about that, though? Are you buying
Buying 150-pound cylinders, we're allowed to have, and believe me, when they come, they count how many full cylinders we have, how many empty cylinders we have, so we're only allowed to have so many on site. 15, I believe it is for ours.
Yeah.
And that's what we use for our disinfection. A lot of places have switched to sodium hypochlorite or to ozone or to different technologies. And it's something that would be good to look into as well. That's, one of the other reasons I put that placeholder in there. Some alternatives.
All right, seeing it's 9:10, I'd like to take our break right now, if that's okay. We've been doing it for 2 hours. Any other questions otherwise? Because if not, then we'll...
other than buy the suit that you need in there in case someone gets hurt, you can get them out of there?
We have bought safety gear, and we have in place the safest ways to maneuver those 150-pound cylinders in and out. 2 people always do it with the carrier present as well. And they always have a quick means of egress and a hooded breathing that will buy you a short amount of time. Short of it spraying up and underneath, you'd be safe.
So is there technology that we could avoid doing that altogether? Do many communities?
Yeah, sodium hypochlorite would be changing in treatment, and you need a more storage area for storage tanks.
How many towns continue to use the chlorine that we're using technique?
Don't see it very often these days.
Believe it or not, some towns used to, Braintree used to 1-ton cylinders to bring it in.
Well, to Sean's point, it was more compact. The alternative is basically bleach. It's liquid, you buy a liquid chemical, you mix it with more liquid, and, it just takes a bigger footprint. Whereas the gas is pretty compact.
Yeah.
But it's gone out of favor.
I can see why. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank
you.
Folks, we're going to take a 10-minute break right now, recess. Then we'll come back into session at 9:20. Vote all the town meeting warrant articles. And in your packet, you should have them. Excuse me, yes. And let's start with the first article for the special town meeting. maybe we can go through these fairly quickly, they're special, because it's
All right.
unpaid bills from the other year, budget reconciliation, that's the first one. Unpaid paid bills from the prior year, and then retirement of debt, which is Article 3. Those are pretty straightforward, Nancy, right?
I did have a question on the overtime for the fire. Did you get that, Nancy? Somewhere.
Probably just find. That is the last sheet in your folder.
Oh, here it is.
There it is.
So,
You can throw the comment that's right in the middle, I have no idea where that came from.
so why don't you explain, it's gone up between 25 and 32% a year?
It's not that it's gone up, the percentage is,
Above the budget?
regular salaries.
Oh,
And for expended year-to-date, it's 32.9% of, the overtime spent to date is 32.9% of the regular salaries. So they normally, when they have vacancies, which they have currently had for several years, they have some recovery in the regular salaries, but they spend more in overtime because they're covering those shifts. When they have overtime due to having an IOD, an injured on duty fill, or from a long-term illness, there's no recovery, it's just more overtime.
so do the combined equal about the same?
It never goes down, it only was worse this year, but there's a footnote on there. The first footnote, not the second footnote, excuse me, the second footnote, not the first footnote. That includes the retro. I haven't done the journal entry yet to reallocate some of the retro for the encumbrance. But it is still high, and they're still, if you look at what their budget is to where they're expended, they're right at the line.
Say that again, they're right at the what?
They're right at the edge. They're well over where they should be at this time of the year based on their budget. But it's a consistent problem we've had the last several years because of the long-term illnesses, the injured duty, and the vacancies. You know, speaking with the chief today, he feels that he's got his vacancies now filled. People haven't started yet, and they won't be all the way through the academy until into 2020, but he actually has bodies that have been hired, which is a huge step forward.
But when there's a vacancy, don't we budget for the overtime?
Not for the overtime, we budget for
The person.
position. So, like I said, the vacancies, we have a pickup in the regular salaries, but we don't have it, you know, you pick up part of it, but not all of it, because you're paying an overtime rate. And not everyone picks up the overtime. It depends on who's looking for additional funds or has the availability to take it. You would think it would be always the lowest person. I mean, there's also a seniority offering, but it isn't always that case. I wish it was always the case that it was the newest person on the force, the person in the station that was at, you know, level 1, but, you know.
When we're fully staffed, Tony, if there's a vacancy or someone takes time off or uses a vacation day, we can let that shift go unfilled and not pay the overtime. We're at a point right now where if someone is off, we have to fill that shift with vacancies just to have enough bodies in the fire department. So anytime we have a vacant shift, it's overtime.
How's that trending? I mean, compared to last year, year before, is it continuing to go up, or do we?
We have to
kind
get
of
those
plateau?
spots filled. So as Nancy said, I think we had 4 vacancies. We've got bodies for those spots, but they have to go through the fire academy before they actually get on the fire department and can start working. We have, I think, 3, either IOD or long-term illnesses. 2 of those, we believe, are gonna be resolving themselves shortly, but it's 6, 7 guys that are not working.
All right, so,
We've been talking about this for 10 years, though.
well, let's get on to, okay, so is everybody good on this one? I'm only saying because I'm like, we're gonna go through 29 articles. It's 9:30, so I just want to make sure that we move along. But the 700 is not just for fire overtime.
No.
It's a combination of that. Looks like DPW,
Oh, in the article? Oh, right.
yeah.
Yeah, there's 252,000 for Storm Riley electrical repairs at the marinas. And that's the replacement of the electrical pedestals where the boats plug in, and all the wiring that's associated with that. I think we had 2 fires the last year.
We had 2 fires this fall and winter, and we opened up some pedestals. We discovered that there were fires that needed, wires that were burning every time.
So this has been, it's on the FEMA list as an approved project, so we are anticipating that we will get 75% of this back. But we put it on the special because we want to get these done for this year's boating season.
Okay.
So that's a big portion of it too.
And then the transfer station piece.
Transfer station, yeah.
We've spoken about before about hauler contracts. We spoke about it when we were doing their budget, that we were going to have to look at those rates again, since the construction debris contract was signed after you increased the rates for construction debris, and that contract alone went up 10%.
Contract alone was what?
Went up 10%.
The transfer station you're talking about?
Yes, the hauling contracts. So this is just to get through the year. We're already 72% expended. CMAS alone is between $25,000 to $27,000 a month, and that's just the non-recycled professional trailer trash.
MSW.
We're paying over $100 a ton, and I don't know what, if the rate went up January 1st, we just haven't been advised of what it is. Normally, they will send us a letter and then send us a balance bill, and we have not received it yet.
How long is that contract for, Nancy, with
I
Covanta?
can answer that question for you in the remainder of this meeting. I just have to look it up.
No, you don't have to. That's all right.
I want to say 2023.
All right, yeah, but it's not happening now. But there were, in the contract, there was percentage of increases every year or every few years, so.
So that retained earnings must be close to,
I have a handout for you if you want it that shows.
Just
where
what's the
everyone's
number?
gonna be at the end. Transfer station will be below $100,000 in retained earnings.
be negative 100,000?
Below
below.
$100,000. If it was negative retained earnings, I
We'd
would
have
not be
to-
this calm. I'm not happy, but I wouldn't be this calm.
All right, any other questions on the special town meeting articles, 1, 2, and 3? No. All right. Annual town meeting. First article is just the compensation of elected officials.
Do you want to vote special town meeting warrant then?
Is there a motion for it?
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we do that then?
Can I just tell you that snow and ice is on there, but it can be taken off if nothing else happens. This was like insurance. If I put it on the warrant, we won't get any more snow. If I leave it off the warrant, I'm gonna get, Mother Nature's gonna attack me.
Put it on the warrant.
All right, thank you.
So it's at the very bottom, it says to be decided,
To be determined.
and you have a handout that shows you we still have over $200,000.
So, okay, it's safe to do a motion on what we have so far?
Yep.
Will the Board of Selectmen approve the warrant for the April 8th, 2019 special town meeting, contingent upon any further changes by town council and/or the town administrator?
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now, annual town meeting. First one's routine compensation of elected officials for all the big bucks we get paid.
Actually, I'm going to change
The
that.
next one is a report of the boards and the committees. You want to change it, did you say?
Waiting for you to catch that.
Third one is capital improvements plan. So at least for the first two, there's no questions by anybody on that, right? All right. Capital improvements plan. So you guys went through it the last week, or the last time we had a meeting. Are there any questions on that article? Because I think, Tony, that goes to what we were just talking about earlier with $4 million.
Right,
Right.
how do you guys feel about just, I mean, we're just putting that on there as a placeholder? The $4 million, we don't know what we're gonna,
Can I just mention, Mr. Chairman, to the board that nothing could be spent from that authorization, whether since the borrowing authorization, any type of borrowing would have to come back before the board for its approval. Any type of contract would have to come back before the board for its approval. Even a contract under 50,000 couldn't be approved because it's full borrowing. So nothing can happen with that particular
Just the authorization of it, okay.
until the board says, yes, it should happen.
Doesn't have to be $4 million just for, is that what you're asking, Tony?
no, I mean, I understand. It just has to be vetted out, you know, we've got to figure out what the plan is. We may want a second opinion, you know, there's a lot going on here that's, maybe you guys knew more than I did, but we need a full-scale plan of what's gonna happen here before we spend $4 million. And then 40 on top of that. So, I mean, I don't have a problem with it being in there, but
I was thinking after knowing it was authorizing it, that if we have it in place, it gives the flexibility to the board to try to determine. I absolutely agree. We have to have that, Kevin, where are you there? The plan put together, because that's really going to dictate the use of what you're going to want to spend. At least by then, at least it's authorized for purposes of proceeding forward with the plan that you're going to have, as opposed to having to wait,
Right.
go back to another town meeting to get the authorization. At least that would give you a lot more flexibility.
It's only an authorization.
Right.
We have to come back before we can spend it, but it's there, so if, you know, we get the report back and says, you need to start yesterday on this new project, whatever that new project is, we have the ability to get started on that project.
Right.
There are two other, just two things on this plan that were not recommended by the town administrator. One is new since last meeting, and that's the Wampatuck fire doors. That was approved by the Capital Budget Committee last night after meeting with the school committee. I was unable to attend that meeting, so I wasn't able to get the update as to what that was. I did not recommend the original. It was well over $100,000, not including the wiring. So this is a much smaller project to replace the fire doors in the Wampatuck, and I believe they would be the automatic doors, so when the fire alarm goes off, the doors would shut automatically. It's $78,000. And then the Capital Budget Committee recommended the second truck for the Harbor Master, which was not recommended on my original capital.
What one is that, Jim?
That's the very last one, Harbor Master truck, second.
Why?
Why? Did I not recommend it?
Sure, while you mention that, I would just happens to be letter Y, but
I don't believe the Harbor Master needs two vehicles. He was replacing his current vehicle and turning in the old one. The old one is a used vehicle, which we purchased when his other vehicle got destroyed in the storm, but we didn't have enough replacement value on it to buy a new truck, so we had to buy a used truck. It's not in great shape. It's okay, but it's not in great shape. But, you know, I don't think the Harbor Master's department, given its size and what it does, needs two vehicles.
what are they gonna do with the other one?
They'll run it until, so Steve has his truck that he will take the new truck, and he uses that to attend his meetings and whatever. The other truck would be used by the people still here or whatever they had to do to haul trash or to pull boats or whatever.
if he's at Cole Parkway and something's needed over at Young's, that was, you know, some of the assistants or summer help could go over and do things that they had to do over there with the old existing truck. So that's what, things like that. Right now, he lets him use his truck, and then he's stuck there. So, I don't know how often he uses it, needs, or runs into that situation, but that's what he explained to me.
So you're not recommending it, but it's on the summary.
Because the Capital Budget Committee recommended it.
Oh.
That's the capital budget. And unfortunately, the Waterways Committee is meeting on it tomorrow, because they haven't voted on it yet either.
So it's going on the warrant, no matter what.
Capital is the board's capital, isn't it?
It's your recommendations that go before town meeting. Capital planning only recommends to you.
Only recommends to you.
So if we say no, that comes off?
I believe that's the way it works,
You don't
yeah.
have to go to the newspaper until March 13th.
It's next week.
It's next Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, so I mean, you wouldn't have another meeting in between, but it's not like this is gonna be trotting out somewhere by email tomorrow.
So any one of these items on here, we could take off?
Yeah.
It's our
It's your
capital.
plan.
Yep.
So, sorry, John, this one's just gonna take a second. So the road and sidewalks are $300,000 in capital. I sent an email. This is all coming from the $400,000 override of several years ago. What is left in that, as revenue? I know we subsidize coastal.
It's 200, right?
Yeah, so I sent you another one of these. And it shows the roads and seawalls since 15 forward, how much was expended on which purposes. So it was for fiscal 16, it was 400,000. For fiscal 17, it was 400,000. For fiscal 18, it was 350. And for fiscal 19, it was 350. For fiscal 20, it was proposed to be 150. On the years that it went from 400 to 350, the $50,000 was allocated to the Coastal Resources Officer. And then on capital plan funding, I showed you what was coming for the same purposes through the capital plan. The capital plan kind of oscillated. It was 400,000 and 358.
So 400 went to the budget in 16, 400 in 17, 350 in 18, 350 in 19, and 150 in 20. And that $200,000 just went into the budget? Across?
Yep.
And now the capital plan is making up the difference in,
Part in free cash and part in borrowing.
well, I don't know, what do you guys think?
Well, I'm looking at it, still the roads and foreshore are still getting paid, for this budget, they're getting 600,000, right? I'm reading your
Roads and
Nancy.
forestry are getting 600,000 in the capital budget
The
and
capital budget.
150,000 in the operating budget.
And I think my thoughts would be that for purposes of this budget, I could accept it, but I think for future years, we got to make sure that it's, try to earmark it primarily for what it was for. That's how I'd look at it.
Chapter 90, totally different, and how much was,
Around, I would estimate 550, 560.
really? Thought it was, we used to
In
have.
your packet tonight, too, I think the chapter 90 numbers in your packet.
Why is there 300 for foreshore protection and then 300 for roads? Who made those numbers up in the capital plan?
For 2020?
Yeah.
Those are my
That's-
recommendations.
So that gets you to the standard 400 and 400.
Well, the commitment we made was 200 and 200 with the override.
That's what I thought, I remember.
That's what we said we would do. So now it's grown in capital to be 400 and 400?
You had an operational commitment, and then
300.
they were also including it in the capital plan as well.
Yeah, but that was never committed to, we never committed to that. We committed to the 200 and 200, which was going to be paid by the override. So the additional in capital was just, piecemeal in terms of the years and what we decided to do. It was never a $800,000 commitment to those two items.
True. This year it is, only because of the demands to the capital.
Well, the capital plan is the largest that it's been I mean, granted, you can't take the two water things into play, but there's a lot of items on here compared to historical years.
Right. Yeah.
If we didn't put 300 into roads, what would that look like? We made it less, because we still have the Chapter 90 money, and that gets shared by sidewalks as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's always $500,000 to $600,000 from Chapter 90 that goes into the roads.
Whether we do it or not, it just accumulates and builds.
Yeah, you do. You just save it for a project.
Right. And that's based on the miles of public road we have in the town.
It seems like this is growing beyond what we committed to back in 16. You know, there was never a capital plan commitment to those two things. There was the override commitment to those two things.
But, let me just say, so if we're looking at 2019, it was 400, 2018 was 600, 2017, 358. I'm looking at the capital numbers that you have.
So how much is in foreshore protection right now that we haven't spent?
Pretty much what's on the sheet, so you have a little bit in fiscal 17 is fully encumbered, fiscal 16 is fully expended in capital. Fiscal 18 is fully expended. Fiscal 19 has about $93,000 left. And then on the part that's in the operational budget, there's only about $5,800 expended for foreshore. So about 200 something left.
And there's a $2 million.
Back on the 2 million. There's the 2 million for foreshore, and then there's the 4 million specifically for the FEMA design.
Right. What does the total capital plan do to our plan to keep that level, the expenditure?
There's very little borrowing in it for the general fund other than for the track. The only other piece of borrowing is the foreshore protection. So I'm comfortable that we can work that in. The track is something that it can be paid down with free cash as we go along, or knocked down with free cash would be helpful. Since we just did a bond issue, we don't have that much that's still sitting out there. It's basically what's in the ban, which is just mostly library and public safety pieces that haven't been borrowed.
So are you suggesting paying that down with cash, free cash next year also? And the year after that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm suggesting we return to it, because if there had been, if we hadn't had to restore the $1 million in stabilization fund for emergency storm costs, it would have been a
We almost would
dramatically
cash that
different
out.
capital plan.
Right, but free cash is low, right? Right now it's lower than it's been historically.
It was lower this year than it was the year before.
Yeah. And we've typically used that to fund capital projects, right?
Yes.
Right, but we took $1 million off the top to pay for the storm damage from last year. So there would have been another $1 million in free cash to fund towards the capital. So that track might have been almost a cash item as opposed to a borrowing item.
Yeah, or any item, not. All right, well, I don't know what you guys, I just don't want to get in the cycle of putting $600,000 or $800,000 a year into roads and, you know, feeling the commitment to match the capital with the cash. We committed to the cash, which is now going into the budget. But it was 4, not 6. Or 8, or whatever.
Well, the only thing about at least with the 6 for this year, is that it's clearly, I mean, with the roads, we're repairing a lot of the roads that have had need to do it, which is great. And I would assume, I mean, at some point, you're gonna stop doing that to some degree. I mean, we could probably keep doing it for year and year and going forward, but at least these are the major roads that we're trying to replace. The foreshore protection, similarly, I guess, I mean, the problem with foreshore protection is these numbers are really tiny to really fix a lot of the walls and/or riprap and/or foreshore protection. I mean, you're talking millions. So I think there's some truth to that, although it does help with the designing of different phases. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our emergency projects, like we had off Range Road where we had collapse.
Good point. Yep.
The other thing, just to bring up, not to cut you off, Sean, sorry, is we're also using money for the culvert replacement for the Bailey's Causeway and the Gilson Causeway. We use some road money to do the culvert replacements. So it's used in multifacets, it's not just paving roads.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that it's being wasted, by no means. There's endless money that we could put into it. I'm just going by what the commitment was made 5 years ago. That's kind of grown. And we're spending a heck of a lot of money. Every one of our enterprise funds has no retained earnings.
I know.
Right, we're gonna have to raise our rates at the transfer station, we're gonna have to raise our water rates, we're gonna have to raise our sewer rates. I think we just have to be cognizant of all of this stuff.
How do you guys feel about the Harbor Master truck? That's 43,000 that we're talking about.
You said Waterways is meeting tomorrow?
I wish he was here still, but, I suppose he could live with it, especially another year.
My inclination is to, I know that Jim has spent a lot of time thinking about it, is to stay with his recommendation on that. I mean, I would like to hear what Waterways has to say, but.
They haven't voted on it. Let you know tomorrow night.
Vote on it tomorrow night.
My feeling is, I personally am like, if Jim feels that we can wait another year, or, at this point.
Sure.
That's, kind of how I'm looking at it. Let me ask you this, if there's a need for a truck to be used, is there an extra truck in the DPW, the highway department, Kevin, that we can find one?
We've always done it.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Tony, how do you feel about that?
It's the smallest item on this list.
Well, it's another one for 30. The OSHA and the SPCC compliance, but,
Yeah, that's an enterprise fund, so it's being funded by the waterways users. As Sean said, there seems to be a use for another truck, if there's only one there, but
John raises a good point.
we probably have other trucks that we could use if we needed it. I didn't vet it out as much as everybody else.
If this was replacing Steve's truck and getting rid of the second truck, I wouldn't have the same issues with it. I don't think they need the second truck.
To add it, right. But if they do, they could find one at Highway or Tree and Park or something like that if needed be.
So it could either be removed or the board can leave it on there and we'll just trade in the other truck. Tell him he's not keeping the second truck.
I don't think that's the case. The truck he has now is okay. It's just when he needs something done at another marina, his truck is gone. So take it off.
Good with that?
Fine.
So the Y comes out. And then, let me ask you, the Wampatuck fire doors, that's M, for 78,300?
I did go to the meeting last night at Capital Planning, and the original request was to replace all of them, and that was a much bigger number, yeah. And what they went back with, in concert with the fire department, was what can we do to bring these up to code without having to replace them? So it's sort of a hybrid of some of the doors are replaced, all of the connectors are replaced, the magnetic closures, and that's what brought the cost down.
My only trepidation is, we're going to get people who are going to come out and say, it's fire doors for the elementary school, it's urgent, the emergency, there's a fire that could trap our kids, and frankly, they're using a fear factor that, we're going through this process to try to fix. Frankly, you could probably replace a ton of things at Wampatuck that are code non-compliant, like I said earlier with Ron Griffin, doors all over the place, windows all over the place. And I guess my thoughts are, granted, there's not, there's you know, the track for the high school and different things. Is this a part of their capital plan? Was this skewed, or was this rather placed, you know, to be replaced within the 5-year capital plan?
Yes.
I mean,
It was
if it
in-
is, then I'm like, why are we all of a sudden leapfrogging, other than for one person on social media who decided to raise a red flag and create this urgent situation? That's a danger, because if our experts, our professionals have said, no, this is not an actual urgent thing that needs to be placed just right now, then why are we now leapfrogging this and putting it forward? That's all.
Well, I think, when Ron came in, he gave us there were, I think, five things on his, yeah, we ought to do these sooner rather than later, including the portico and a couple of other things at Wampatuck. And I believe this was on that list.
This was on his list.
This
Been
was on his list.
This was the
and,
next thing on his list. And I wasn't at the meeting last night. Just to be clear, the doors meet the code from when the building was built. I went up there with Chief Murphy, and he looked at the doors. The doors do need some work, whether repairs or replacement. Fire doors don't have anything to do with saving the people in the building. They deal with saving the building. They're 90-minute doors, so everybody's going to be out of the building before the 90 minutes expires. Trust me, we're not going to have people in that building.
What about for heat loss? Are we gaining anything by replacing them, saving energy?
Well, they're not
They're mostly
exterior doors.
interior.
They're all interior
All
doors,
right,
Sean.
okay.
You know, I wasn't there last night, so I'm not opining on it. The original capital request that they had asked for just was bringing the doors up to today's codes, which we don't have to do. This is replacing and repairing some of the doors. Again, I wasn't there last night. I can't be at every meeting all the time, and I wasn't able to get to that one, so, you know, the smaller request is not something that I'm saying I think it should come out, but I didn't recommend the original one because I think it was way beyond the scope of what was necessary.
But anyway, that was my only trepidation. I just don't want to see, you know, people all of a sudden trying to waive this is urgent, and, you know, you're subjecting kids at, you know, for health and safety, which is not what we do. I mean, but if the board feels they want to go forward with it, I'm fine doing that, but I just wanted to raise that concern.
Yeah, I think we have to rely on an expert. If the fire doors are broken, they have to be fixed. You know, the last thing we want is our kids to be at jeopardy in a school. So if they're broken, then fix them.
Right, and this building is not contemplated to be in the removal. I mean, this building's going to stay. We're going to be upgrading it anyway, so why wait?
I mean, if they can be fixed, why didn't we fix them? I guess did we not fix them because we didn't have the money? I mean, does someone just have to get in there with a...
So, when we looked at it, I mean, one of the things that Chief Murphy suggested is look at some of the doors they put into the old gates. They put new doors in there not too long ago, maybe those could come out. This does put the doors on the automatic release, which is not what Chief Murphy had contemplated. His was fix the door so they close right, and then do some training, so when the teachers come out, the last teacher closes the door behind them. This makes it automatic. The fire alarms go off, the doors shut. So,
I'm fine, leave it on.
Yep, I agree.
All right, that concludes the capital, and the one that's coming off is the Y.
So, one quick look at this thing. So does this mean $884,000 of free cash is spending on these items? Is that about as much as, and then, I guess that's hard to, and then there's other articles, so the bonding amount is $2 million for the $300,000 for foreshore protection and 1.6 for the track. Okay. Are those numbers in line with what we've done historically? They seem, I don't remember spending $3.5 million on a capital plan.
I think last year's was significantly higher, wasn't it?
Well, sometimes there's like one item. I don't know. You tell me, Nancy. You're the...
What trucks did we do last year?
We did 11 trucks. The trucks are, you know, like $50,000 a pop. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, last year's was a big capital year.
Just pulling it up.
All right. You all right?
Good?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
All right, so, should we just move Article 3 of the annual town meeting, A through X? Subject to, where's my thing? Subject to, so if we move Article 3 of the April 8th, 2019 annual town meeting, A through X, contingent upon any further changes by town council and/or town administrator.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Canfield, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Article 4, that's the operating budget. Well, nothing's changed other than what we've talked about, right? Throughout the past 2-3 months.
We made some changes based upon the last set of figures from the Financial Forecast Committee. The big changes were exactly what I talked about when I did my budget presentation. The return money in highway, return money in tree and grounds for some of their repairs and maintenance lines, so.
In your packet, there should be a true-up.
Should be a what?
A true-up. I'm making my own words.
Sounds like tulip. True up. Fire.
It was a one-pager. Do you have it? Not in your handouts, but it would have been in the packet, so it would be on your computer. I didn't make another copy for your folders since they're heavy.
No, I don't see it. All right, so what is it?
General fund budget reconciliation, looks like that.
Revenue.
Don't see that one.
It would have been in the actual electronic packet.
Okay.
You should see this.
Under tool.
It only takes a minute to print you off a couple down the hall, just go snag them if you want them. You could, like,
Oh, here it
If
is.
you want to move past it, I can go in front.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, so let's just, okay, wait a minute, I'm losing my concentration. We're on Article, the budget.
Page
We're on the
94.
budget, so you're trying to figure out, what exactly are you, what's the change before you make copies, I guess? What are we looking at?
So,
Either or?
we had a couple of, as Jim pointed out, financial forecast met last week. There were additional funds that were allocated in the change in the forecast itself as to what the shared costs were, and 2 items, one from the school side and one from the town side, were added as shared costs. And then all of the contracts settled, the 4 outstanding collective bargaining contracts settled, and as we were going through, I advised the board that we would have to go back through and do all of the personnel schedules again. So everything that we had given you were estimates. So this is basically actual salary classification plans. So you can see, we pretty much touched every deposit, every.
Karen. Sorry, Nancy. All right, so I'm looking at this and it says, okay, I see the shared costs, 16
So
million.
did that
school.
pickup go to cover all those contracts? Is that what you're saying?
There were also some restorations to other budgets that Jim just spoke about, to public grounds, to highway, and then.
Information technology, and we had to return part of the scheduler, was it? The Council on Aging, was that title? Gotcha.
Yeah, some of the, we were waiting for an answer from GATRA whether or not they could support the budget we wanted, which was all of the transportation coordinator, and the answer was no. So we had to bring her back.
So there's
part of her salary back.
14,000 and change coming back onto the Council on Aging to support that.
And you move this, that's why we got the street lights back up, because you moved that.
Above the line.
Above the line, yeah. I'm just gonna go grab the tops of it.
Okay.
There it is.
Okay.
I can't figure that out.
I can't figure it out. I guess I'm trying to figure out, so our budget's changed because things have,
Financial forecasting got together, and the town and the school had items that went to shared expenses. The leases for the buses and the streetlights for the town.
And then we had the savings on health insurance from 5% to 3.1.
Yeah.
okay.
Right. So there was a little bit of additional money for the town budget as well as for the school. So the question, so of that additional money, if I understand what Nancy and Jim just said, or Jim, you can say it. So the contracts went up a little bit and the money went towards that.
Yep.
GATRA cost 14 grand expense that we didn't have in the budget
Didn't have the
before.
budget. Then a restoration to information technology from level services, we put money back in there.
What does that mean? I don't know.
The computer line for all the information technology for the town.
So the internet, the
All our hardware, our software, our maintenance contracts, everything, we put some money back in there because Bill was right up
Oh,
against
okay.
it. So we put some money back in there. And then we put money back into the highway department for their repair and maintenance, which I had talked about. We put money back into public grounds for their repair and maintenance.
I see EDC got 3,000 too.
And I restored 3,000, so I level funded EDC despite the fact that the meals tax did go down. They're funded by the meals tax, but we level funded them. It was $3,000.
So are these all the changes here, Nancy?
Yes.
So $87,000 went to fire?
Yeah.
That's for the contract? And that wasn't in it before?
No, that was, we had an estimate for all of them. Some of them were better than others, like police, we had a tentative agreement, so we had a sense of where it was going. And the dispatchers had reclassifications, but we had a sense of where that was going, so we were able to build some of that in the original estimate. Fire, we didn't have any sense of where.
So that's all the money, basically?
Yeah.
That's 80% of the money?
So where you see negatives, there were no positions cut and nobody was cut, it was just the percentage we used as an estimate.
I try to keep that 11,977 in the town administrator's line. I was going to move that to my salary, but just because these meetings are running so late all the time.
I caught it. All right, so these are the numbers then that now need to shake through here.
The warrant you have reflects all
these
of
numbers.
It does.
Pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that article?
No? So and the number ties to the financial
Yeah,
forecast?
the proof at the bottom, unfortunately, it's so small with the animals to read, I apologize.
All right, so this is how I propose. Let's say 4 is fine, let's get to the next ones, and then if there's any issue, then we can just stop there and vote in the, all the articles at one time, so we're doing it constantly. How's that?
Okay.
All right, Article 5, Waterways Enterprise Fund.
That's fine.
I think that's fine, we haven't had any issues with that. Nothing came up, right?
Right.
Golf Course Enterprise Fund, that article, I think is fine, right?
Yep.
I don't think anybody had any issues with that one. Waterways Enterprise Fund, this is $3,249,000.
Wastewater.
Wastewater.
Oh, I'm sorry, wastewater, waterways, sorry. Wastewater, definitely have no problems with that. Anybody?
Well, just the fact that it's running at a deficit.
We're gonna have to raise rates.
Yeah.
And Will's doing a good job.
He's doing a very good job.
Poor Will. Transfer station. Same situation
I mean,
there.
the budget's fine, but we just have to be aware that those last 3 ones, rates are gonna have to go up on
Yep.
water, sewer, and transfer.
You're likely gonna have to revisit those budgets at a special sometime during fiscal '20.
Right, because we're using retained earnings to
Hey,
subsidize it, and we're gonna run out of them.
And transfer station probably won't make it with their hauling costs unless something changes dramatically in the market, which we can always hope for.
Where's the summary of the retained earnings?
In my lap.
Do we have it in here? We don't.
No,
Is it on the capital plan?
It's like Jerry's tote board, it keeps changing.
It's on
Oh,
the
yeah,
capital
yeah, yeah.
plan too.
It's in there, yeah, it's in
Top and
there.
bottom of the
It's
capital
in that
plan.
big book there.
It's at the top of this thing.
So much red.
That's one we want to keep. Yep, right there. All right. Water Enterprise Fund, Article 9. Any questions on that one?
Nope.
Saying none, all right. Stabilization Fund, excess levy, I don't think that's an issue, right?
Nope.
Revolving funds limits,
Nope.
any issues there?
No.
All right, moving over to
CPC?
CPC.
Let's wait till the last for this one.
All right, so are there any questions on the CPC?
It's asked Gary a lot. Just went over all that.
The only comment is the actual trust will be given March 11th.
The rescission.
Yeah, I'll email everyone the next day.
Is this the article I got up and told them that they didn't own the property, and then the town decided to actually sell the property, their property, and they don't own it? Is that the issue?
No, they have a title issue with one of the two parcels.
That's the property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's been going on for 3 years now. So at this point, I don't know if the lawyers are even talking to each other anymore, you know? So it's just gotten really out of control, but we're going to revisit it. It's possible we might give them another 6 months. But they'll be on this.
So if you guys vote to not rescind, what happens as far as the warrant goes?
That 389 will just come off.
Should leave it in the warrant.
Yeah, and then if need to, we take it out.
Yeah. So, can we move it?
You just table it at the meeting. right?
Well, we're not going to the newspaper until March 13th.
Oh, so that's perfect.
That's our next article, that's Article 13.
So one comment on the CPC use of the funds for the field. You know, it's a lot of money. It's not the way that I wanted to see it spent. But the town will decide, and it's just a little bit riskier than I would. And Gary, we've spoken about this, you're gonna present it, and just show the town what it is. And here's what it is, there's a lot of cash, there's a lot of cash now, and a lot of cash in the future, and borrowing, that's gonna be a change to what we've ever done with CPC in the past. And but as I said earlier, there's not another way to fund this except through an override. So, and I don't have another solution, so, as long as you present it and show people what it is and they understand what they're getting into, then.
Mark Novak is going to present the actual plan.
All right. So that's Article 12. Article 13 is the one that you mentioned there could be rescission. Other than that, we'll know what it is, but we're going to leave it in right now, and if it's not there, then it's not there.
Yeah, and like I said, the next one, I'll email everyone.
Perfect. Questions on that one? Article 14, that's a standard one for Chapter 91 liability. I assume no questions on that.
Thank you, Mr. Myerson.
Good night.
The next one is local option acceptance. This is the property tax exemption. And we talked about this 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And Article 16 is the additional one as a part of that. And Article 17. All right. Then we have Article 18, which is the adoption of the room occupancy excise tax. We talked about that 2 weeks ago. Article 19, establishment of transfer station enterprise capital stabilization fund.
It's fine.
And that's fine, right?
Yeah, 3 of the enterprise funds have them. This would be for the other 2.
Yep. And the next one is for the Waterways Enterprise Capitalization Stabilization Fund. And then acceptance of a public way, Blanchard Farms Lane.
Yep. That's gone through the
That's fine,
process.
right? Did that go through the process?
Hasn't finished yet, but it's supposed to be ready for town meeting, that's what they're telling me.
Well, I'm the chairman of that street acceptance, and I have not gone to one meeting because I haven't been told of any.
Yeah, they have not started that process. They're not going to be ready to come.
All right. I
So
just
this
wanted
will
to
get
know.
IP'd?
That'll probably be IP, it'd have to be then. Okay.
We can put it back.
And I guess the question I asked Brad last time when I was on telephone conference was, were the conditions that were set for that subdivision pursuant to the planning board with the idea that they were going to be accepted as a street, or were they designed with a subdivision that at the time was not to be accepted by the town, but, so the standards were not up to what the town would ordinarily accept?
That I don't know, I can check.
If you could, I asked that
Two
because...
waivers that I was aware of, one on the granite curbing, replacing the granite curbing with bituminous, which is a usual waiver, most people don't put in the granite curbing. And instead of a 24-foot width, it's a 22-foot width.
So 2 feet shorter.
But aside from that,
They have sidewalks?
there were no other waivers that I saw on the planning board's approval. So it should be constructed, with the exception of the width, really constructed as a public way.
That's the only...
I think they had not, excuse me, started the public street acceptance process. I mean, they were before the board, not that long, punch list kind of items, so, yeah, to my knowledge, they haven't started, but I can tell you that.
Yeah, Sean McCarthy did not receive the Mylar yet last time I talked to him. He was like,
Doesn't sound like it's going to be ready then, but, okay. So, I guess what does the town want to do? Do you want to, or town, what's the board want to do? Keep it on and IP it maybe if it turns out they haven't finished their...
Yeah, I mean, I would leave it on there. If they don't finish, we'll just postpone it. We can put it off for the town meeting in November,
Okay.
October.
All right. And then we have Article 22. Now, this one is yours, Brad, for the flexible open space development, Section 550. Was this presented to the board at the last meeting? Because
No.
I haven't,
No.
we haven't had a presentation on it. Sure.
So, and none of these have been voted on by the planning board yet. That'll be March 14th. This essentially adds in a fourth option that used to exist within the zoning bylaw for donation of open space. And it allows it to go to a homeowners association. Currently, you have to give it to the
Town.
Concom, the state, or
All right.
you get the other option. But this, a lot of time, those options are not viable for property owners, given the nature of the property they're donating. So this gives them a fourth option and keeps the town, or keeps it open space, and I believe on the tax rolls as well.
All right, that sounds good to me.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm just a little slow. So, somebody wants to donate money to the town
Donate land, so if they do it.
to make open space?
Flexible open space development, they're required to preserve a certain portion of that property. So to do that, they can't, right now, they have to give it away in 3 different ways: to the Conservation Commission, to the State Energy and Environmental Affairs, linking on the third option. This adds the fourth option to allow it to go to a homeowners association, kind of just a deed restriction, essentially keeping it on the tax rolls, but preserving it as open space.
So the group would then own the property, but it'll have a restriction on it?
Yes, yes, and the option used to exist. It was taken away for some reason that I don't know some years ago. So essentially, this would be restoring that option for developers.
We had one of these before us where they couldn't find anybody to hold the restriction. So it came back to us, and Conservation didn't want it, but it came to the point where Conservation had to take it because no one else would hold the restriction.
Curtis Farm, for example, that came not recently.
I think that was it, yeah.
So up near
Yeah,
Hadley,
I'm
the
fine
bush.
with it,
It made sense to me, because
Makes it much
instead of just
easier.
giving it to the town all the time, they're basically giving away useless land to the town to hold on to. That's really what it
This
is.
way here, they're giving it to the association.
They have to create an
And still get a
association,
little
and
bit
they
of
don't
tax
have to,
revenue.
and small tax, but at least, it's their responsibility.
All right.
Then the next one is Article 23, which is the Greenbush Driftway zoning amendments. I have not had a chance to look at it. I've just been busy, but
What
do
is
you
it?
want to kind of go through it, Brad, for everybody, because for the town, or for the board, rather?
So this dates back to 2016, so it predates me. There was a series of visioning sessions for each of the villages in Scituate. It was Harbor, Greenbush, North Scituate, Humrock. So this EDC and planning board sponsored this visioning plan. The plan was developed and to codify the concepts in the plan, which in particular for Greenbush called for a pedestrian-friendly, walkable, vibrant commercial district. It's all clearly laid out in there. There was always the intention of codifying that in zoning, and that's what we've done for the last year and a half. The zoning actually has been kind of underway or in progress for the last year and a half. And what we've been doing is going out and having several public meetings, stakeholder meetings. The planning board had a public workshop. We just had a public hearing last week, I believe, to kind of vet these proposed changes. And the proposed changes would essentially, within the Greenbush Driftway area, because if you look at the zoning map, it's kind of a hodgepodge now, so it gets rid of the two existing base districts, the business and commercial. It gets rid of the village business overlay district and inserts this new base district, and there's sub-districts within that. Again, what you're going to ultimately get out of this is not any more density. I think it's more of it's what's called a form-based code. It's more of an aesthetic. I don't want to say it's just aesthetic, but it really kind of dictates, not dictates, but it guides what development will look like in Greenbush. So we've done a tremendous amount of public outreach on this, and we'll kind of see where it goes. But it's based on the vision plan, which is, again, was created in 2016 and 17. It's available.
And it's sponsored by the planning board.
Yes.
Okay. And will there be a map available, what area it is?
Yeah, so if you go online right now, the entire, because it's a suite of changes, so it's striking out the existing zoning and then several new sections, so it's a lengthy packet, but it's all on there. And what we're doing right now is preparing a kind of a summary to sit on top of that to try and just, in a summary fashion, tell folks what it's about, but the full version is available online and will be made available as a handout at town meeting.
So is this changes to the code?
It is.
Or is it a whole new section going in?
No, so it's modifications to existing sections and then a new section as well.
And the idea is to make it more uniform? Is that what you're trying to
The
say?
idea is to implement the vision that was in the Greenbush vision plan. So to do that, you had to make modifications. What we had is business district, a commercial district, and then an overlay district.
Right.
And you can opt out of the overlay district and do two different things, between now and business and commercial district, whatever your property is in. Or you could do this village business overlay district. What is replacing or proposed to replace all of this is more consistent with what is now what you're allowed to do in the overlay district. So again, you're going to see a lot of the similar type of developments, but there's other things in the bylaw that we don't have now about trying to get better quality open space, more amenities, just kind of more guidance. It's not as open during the planning board process.
This is on the warrant anyways, because the planning board has sponsored it,
Yes.
so it's on.
Yes.
Okay. To Tony's point, just briefly, I think you said you're not sure you can vote on it. I personally feel kind of the same way without really looking at it, so it's going on anyways between now and...
We need a presentation,
We'll probably have
understand.
presentations spread.
Because you're saying there's a bunch of other little things and all
I
this.
think we're going to probably need to know, so it's going on, not that, but I think we can vote on supporting it or later, at a later date.
Or at town.
Yeah.
We can vote at town meeting.
Town meeting, that's all.
It really is
Complex.
it's a comprehensive, thought-out way of being in front of what's going to happen in these potential development areas, that, sometimes there's criticism, things just happen, we're not, this is a really good tool to get ahead of changes that are likely to happen in those areas, and have more aesthetic and developmental control, I hate to use that word, but to set standards that are, I think, consistent with the vision that was laid out in 16 and 17. You never presented to us? I'm sorry, I've gone to a bunch of these, so I'm confused.
I don't believe to you, but probably everyone else in the town of Scituate at some point.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to come and do a
So
presentation.
this is what I'd like to do then, if we don't mind. It's going on, so we're not saying it's our next meeting, which is in 2 weeks. Can you just give us a presentation, you and Karen, just to say,
You can do
okay,
it
here's,
useful.
because I know the old bylaws and the overlays, and I know it well. obviously, the impacts and everything else, it would be helpful for the board just to kind of see exactly how it's going to be putting together, it sounds like, a lot of the ambiguities and some of these things, and getting rid of some of the overlays that just are redundant and/or not worth, they're not.
Especially after planning board votes on it. They haven't even voted yet, right?
Right.
Yeah, they just closed their public hearing at their last meeting, so they were going to vote on the 3 of them. And as part of your packet and backup, next meeting, I can send you that summary.
Perfect. Thank you. That'd be good. All right. So that takes care of that article.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, just one thought.
Yeah.
Because this is about 106 pages, it's going to cost thousands of dollars to put in newspaper.
The 106 page, sorry.
No,
It's a little side
I just
conversation.
want to talk it out, I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a 106-page red line version of the bylaw. Having spoken to Cindy Amara, the summary that's in your warrant, she's going to review and see if that's sufficient in the advisory committee booklet, an appendix that has the 106-page red line version.
Okay.
Aye.
So you're gonna have to have 1,000 copies of it at town meeting?
Yeah, getting a quote on it now.
It doesn't need to go in the morning newspaper.
The warrant already has the summation of what you're deleting this, adding this, and it would refer to places where you could find this if you wanted to look at it in advance. So it would refer, her recommendation was on file at the town clerk's office, available at the library, available online. And then it would be inclusive in the advisory committee booklet was her recommendation.
And again, Lorraine, you might have sent it. I know you sent something to me.
Yes.
I didn't know whether it's the 106 pages. If it is, great. I'll open it and figure it out. But if it's not, if it is, then that's fine. I just need to see what the red line is.
It's on the website now.
All right, perfect. That's all. All right. Does that make sense, everybody?
Sure. Don't tell me
Good.
what it says.
Thank you. Yep.
If we ever publish that, we'd have our own newspaper.
All right, next one, 24, is the general bylaw amendment of town meetings. That's ours. No questions on that one, right?
No. No. But we could pass this one and then put that one on the special and save a couple $1,000 on printing.
You can't, I checked already, because we have to have it approved by the Attorney General meetings first.
Have what, this,
The bylaw after the town meeting.
Yeah.
We have the time.
Or we'd still have to put it in the advisory committee booklet or make handouts at town meeting according to town council.
All right, then Article 25 is conservation land. This is the final language coming from town council. Jim and I are going to be meeting tomorrow, so we'll find out exactly, still with Ellis, more info on that for the board at the next meeting. That gets us to Article 26, which is a petition amending zoning map. So let's stop there, and if everybody's agreeable, could I have a motion for Articles 5 through 25 to accept?
omit that zoning one?
Well, it goes on anyways. It has to go on, the zoning one.
Yeah, but we're not voting, you want us to vote? in
We're
favor.
voting to put this
Just on the warrant.
on the warrant, that's all.
Don't we vote in favor or not in favor?
At some point, we should.
At some point, we're
but-
going to have to.
That's what we're doing right now, I thought.
We're putting it on the warrant, and it's sponsored
it.
by the planning board, and then we'll
So we're gonna
vote.
go through every one again
Our
and say
opinion.
4-1,
You know what, we can just,
whatever.
at the next meeting, we could,
I don't think we
Vote
should
them up
vote
or
until
vote them
planning board's approved it.
That and
no, I agree.
Mar- and wait for
And more, I was going to say, if
Mar-
more is here for the next meeting, then it could be full board, that's all.
Okay.
You know what, and what I'll try to do is just ask you folks and ask Maura to take a look at all the articles, and that we can vote, and if there's any, shall we say, feelings of one way or the other, let's vote you the unanimous ones, and then we can go to the ones that anybody wants to vote against. And that way it'll go quicker than having to go through each and every one. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
All
We
right.
could do hold.
So for right now,
Yes.
just, you want to vote?
So I just want to put it on the warrant, so
And you made a motion.
I'd say move the Board of, if somebody would move the Board of Selectmen to approve the warrant for April 8th, 2019, annual special town, the annual town meeting articles 5 through 25, upon any further change by town council and/or town administrator.
So moved.
That would be a motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
We did
Did I do
approve
4, right? I did approve 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you did.
Did I not approve 4?
I don't know, but want to amend that just to include
Oh, no, we
4.
didn't do
You
4.
approved,
1, 2, 3?
you did approve 4.
I thought so, yeah.
Oh.
Not that late
I'm
yet.
paying
You
attention.
approved 1 and 2.
Yeah, 1, 2, and, yeah, 1 and 2 need to be approved.
We did 1, 2, and 3
You
for
said
the
okay,
special.
you didn't.
All right.
I
So-
move that we approve
Just add 1.
Articles 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 through 25 on the April 25th, April 8th, 9th, I can't even talk.
2019 annual town meeting contingent upon any further changes by town council and/or by town administrator. That's a motion by Ms. Canfield, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor? Aye. So now we have all articles, special and annual, up to 25. Now, 26. This is a petition to amend the zoning map to extend Hummerock Village Residential Overlay Zoning District. Is there anybody here to speak to that article?
Talk about it, but it's not our.
Well, I guess my feeling on it is if they're not willing to come to talk to us about it, how can we support something like that? But it's on it by petition anyways, right?
Yep.
How does the board feel?
I didn't invite them to come.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
You did not.
I did not invite them to
We should invite all of them to come, I mean, at any,
We should
In the
probably
future.
invite them to next one, maybe.
yeah.
I have in the past, but that's fine.
Yeah.
Do you want me to have them come to your next select? Can you invite them?
I would invite them to the next
Yeah.
one, so at least
They
we can
want
vote
to.
on it,
If
that's
they
all.
don't,
Yeah, I think if something's on here and they want us to give their opinion, we should hear what they have to say.
But we do have one petitioner here.
Yeah. Want to give a quick, it seems like spot zoning, what do you,
No, Megan, I wasn't here when they originally created the overlay many years ago. So this is an extension of the overlay to include the parcel where the boatyard is, right when you go over the bridge, immediately to the left. The overlay that exists in other parts of that area of Hummerock will now extend to the rest of that parcel. It would allow for a redevelopment of the site with a mix of uses. I believe the owner has in mind some condos, which are like the condos that exist next door, and some kind of retail use, but that's about as much as
What does, has the planning board voted on it yet, Brad?
They have not voted, they seemed supportive of it. But
Is this-
they have not voted on it.
Is this a vision or a view? The concern I have is that, what about the person across the bridge now, who may not be in the overlay district? Do they now say because it's across the road, we should be in it? And, you know, I mean, I think, is this instead of having residents who live there decide their zone, it really should come from your office and Karen to say, yes, this is necessary, as opposed to them deciding it, because at some point, I'm thinking, it is spot zoning. It's not in the business district, right? Or if it is in the business district, but it's not in the overlay.
Yeah, it's not in the overlay.
You know, and first question I'd ask is Bill Limbacher. Bill was instrumental in doing the Hummerock one, I remember that.
Yeah, I would want to know why it was originally left
Yeah.
out.
Because I'm like, you know, that's all.
to John's point, wouldn't you include all 4 corners?
Yeah.
I mean, you have a restaurant, you have a commercial parking lot, and other retail spots, so you,
I mean, it's obvious why they're doing it. They're doing it to just build condos.
right.
So they're not really looking at the business, which really begs the question of really how successful is this overlay district? Because the intent was create mixed use so that we could revitalize the business district. And what we're finding is people are taking advantage of it to basically build condos. And my concern about that is, you know, that's not the vision. And if that's not the vision, then do we really want to mass condos down there? And if that's the case, then why are we just expanding condos up and down Hummerock? And I'm not advocating that, but I'm just saying, to me, that's really what we're dealing with here, is somebody who wants to development to make money, and that's not the vision or the position, I don't think, of the town at this point. But again, if that's what the planning department and you see as the director of planning and development, that yes, that's a good thing, then I value on it. I'm not saying that you do, Brad, but I'm just saying that's the concern I have with this article. And I've talked to the attorney on it, and I said, to me, it's spot zoning. He said, no, it's not. And I'm like, well, my concern is, why are we doing it? Because they're going to build condos. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, and I think it's consistent with the vision plan that we want to enhance the existing business district. So I kind of stayed out of it in this one of the reasons it came forward as a citizen petition article. But again, I was not in the room at the time they presented it from the board. We had been interviewed by someone about the Greenbush stuff, but, you know, again, what I heard is that the board seemed supportive of it, but they had not voted yet.
If you could, again, well, the planning board's gonna do what they're gonna do. I just would hope that they realize that, is this for condos, or is this for business? Or is it for mixed use? And, you know, I guess they'll make the decision, so we'll see. But, yeah, if we can invite them to the next meeting, I think it's only fair, Lorraine, if they want to come. What's the board want to do on that? Just wait until the next meeting?
Yeah, that's what I would say.
It's on anyway, so we don't have to vote it on. Yeah. All right, next one, petition termination of lease with Gold Green, Inc. Again, it's on by citizen petition. Do we want to, we should probably invite them all if they want to come tell us why.
They,
I'd say that.
both sides showed up at the advisory board meeting. It was an ugly, ugly meeting.
On this article?
Yes. There's a personal history between the proponents and the object of this article. I did not want to extend that to one of our meetings. Suffice to say that town meeting cannot vote to terminate a contract that has been entered into by the Board of Selectmen. It is not a legal article. If you wish to have them in, we'll bring them in, but I'm giving you fair warning. It was personal, and it was ugly, and it was uncomfortable.
Why would it even go, if it's illegal, why does it even go on the warrant?
Petition article.
Right.
Has to be
That
on the
is
warrant.
just a waste of time and energy.
I mean, I think we can vote on that because I think the council's
you.
opinion
I
makes it
agree.
very clear what
Right.
our
If
position
it's-
should be.
If it's illegal, then I'd agree. There's no need to bring in a
So do
discussion
they
on
get to
something.
present at town meeting?
I think that's going to be up to the moderator. The question will be, is the article curable, which I don't believe it is. In other words, can you amend the article to make it so it would be a legal article? I don't believe you can. The only one who can terminate that contract would be this Board of Selectmen. I haven't looked at the contract. I gave a copy to John. I don't know if he's had a chance to look at it. I'm not sure there's a whole lot of reasons we can terminate the contract, but, you know, could you make it an instruction to the board? That's a separate part of the town meeting as opposed to an article like this. So that's more up to the moderator. I hope he says no, because again, it was not pleasant to sit through.
Well, the good
I'm
news
not-
is I'm not presenting that article.
Doesn't matter, it depends how the vote goes, and we're just, if it's unanimous not to support, then any one of us stands up and says that.
No, I know. It's like, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess.
So I
What?
want me to make a motion to not support Article number 27?
Second?
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Okay. Which brings us to the last article of the night, right? That's it?
I hope so.
Which is Article 28. I was looking at one earlier, and I happened to see Article 28, 29, but this is Article 28. And this is the temporary deferral of building. And I do think we have the petitioner here. Come on up, John. This is your chance to convince the board as to why we should be supporting it.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Name and address.
My name is John Bemke. I live at 49 Sedgwick Drive in Scituate. Been a resident for 20 years.
Sorry, 49.
Sedgwick Drive. So do you have a copy of the
Article, we do. Yep.
Well, I'll just hand this out as just some thoughts I had to kind of make it move quickly, because it's been a long night for all of you, and
Fading
I
fast.
appreciate having
Can you give Lorraine a copy too, if you have one?
either listened to on TV or sat through a couple of your meetings. It's impressive what you all do. I have immense respect for you.
So essentially where this is coming from is that when we were all here in 2016, and there was a drought, and we were darn close to running out of water, from what I can tell and from what I learned. And so I decided to get involved in the town and try to learn more about why that would happen. And in essence, what I have learned is that we have a budget, an allocation of water that we're allowed to use by the state, by the DEP. And the number is based on our average annual consumption. But as you guys all heard earlier today, I didn't make this up, that you guys all heard it from somebody else, like, we're not average. First of all, we are unusual in that we have a combination of wells and a reservoir as our sources of water. And secondly, we have a very nonlinear consumption pattern. In the winter months, we use way less than our average. And in the summer months, especially 4th of July and end of August, we go way over our average. And the problem is that our wells can't support our consumption, and so we use the reservoir, and we draw down the reservoir. And I don't know if any of you were at the presentation about the fish ladders and all that, but there's a chart, and I'm sorry I didn't bring this for all of you, and I'd be happy to pass it around, but basically, I'm sorry I don't have a copy of this, but it's in the presentation.
Copies for you?
Sure. But basically, the simple version of it is, it's just a matter of time every summer, depending on rainfall, before we run out of reservoir water, and how much people use and how little rain we get. And so it didn't make sense to me that we would continue to add consumers to a water supply that we know has a cap on it, and that it's a penalty on all the people who are already here that we're going to run out of water on a regular basis. We already have all kinds of limits that get put on us by the state, and if we have severe drought, we're really going to run out, like we just are. I think you know that. You guys were here. You went through that. And so I think we need to do a water study, and we need to understand it, and we need to understand why it is that we don't have enough water and what we can do to address the issue. And it just feels like that's a starting place. It's not an answer. It's not the solution to how we resolve it. But you can't have a good plan if you don't have a good study and analysis. And I read a pretty good study that was done, I guess, in 2001, although I thought it was done in 2003. Anyway, it's pretty darn old. And it seemed like that's what we should do. And so we started talking about doing that, well over a year ago. And it just never went anywhere. They just were talking about it and they weren't doing it. And so I would ask every month at the Water Resource Committee meeting, how are we doing on the water study? And it was always the same, we're not making any progress. Now, I would not want to try to run the Department of Public Works in this town. Like, it's a heck of a job. So I'm not being critical. I just felt like nothing was happening. It's time to push on this and make it happen. And so that's why I decided to submit this petition article to try to make something happen.
Thank you. So your article says, in essence, that
Thank you, man.
you're instructing, in essence, the town, whatever departments, committees, but to temporarily defer approval of any new construction in the town of Scituate. And then you have intended for multi-tenant occupancy. And then you said intended for single-family occupancy, where the developer or builder of said property is requesting permission to build more than one residence.
So equate that to a subdivision.
Right.
So
Basically trying to carve out what I think of as kind of the lifeblood of this town, which is guys who build one house at a time. So the purpose of that language was to say, hey, if you're basically in the business of building one house at a time, the numbers aren't going to be that accurate. We're not going after you.
Let me ask you
You're
this.
within the rounding error.
What
so
happened
we
with
should let
senior
those-
housing? We have a proposal, which is a friendly 40B behind central housing right now, central school, central housing is what it's called, but central school, that is multi, but it's for senior housing. Wouldn't Wouldn't this article prevent that from being built, John?
I don't know, but I would certainly think so, yes.
And I only say that because
But I would guess I would clarify that. It only delays the building of that until we do a water study. Like, I don't think this is rocket science, but I don't do water studies, but, you know, and as it turns out, you know, they've actually got an RFP that's partially written, and, you know, maybe it's not going to take that long.
Well, let me, and I'm reading your article. This temporary deferral is to remain in effect until the town can establish a well-defined method to demonstrate that sufficient water supplies are in production to support all additional residents expected to occupy properties pending approval. That doesn't say water study. That says till there's enough sufficient supplies, which could mean source. I mean, to me.
But wouldn't you want that? Don't you want to know that we have enough water? My understanding is that in our approval process, there's a part of the planning committee process, which is part of the way our town is run, where they go to the water department and they say, do we have enough water? Should we approve this project? And the answer is based entirely on this number, this average number from the state, which is actually higher than what we can produce. And so they always get approved because we can't get up to that number.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the law is you can't deny if you meet those standards. So if you know, if the planning, and Brad, you'll correct me, so if somebody comes to us and says, I'm going to build 15 condos over here, and we know it's going to, you know, tax us in the summer months when we're always taxed, we cannot deny them because it wouldn't affect our annual draw on an average basis?
Yeah, if you're compliant with the permit, you can't turn folks away. And if you're actually under your permit, yeah, if you're under, essentially you can't turn folks away.
Right, they don't look at it at our peak, they look at it the average.
Yeah.
And we don't have the right to do that, the way the law is written, so.
You go back to DEP, you know, as drastic as it was with 1 year that was a crisis today, as of that 1 year, we want to impose kind of a amorphous, you know, development halt or a development moratorium. And that's essentially what they're going to say.
I guess what I'm looking at, there are a few thoughts that I have, and I'm just not here to, you know, debate you or do anything, just concepts, some ideas that I'm saying. One is, I know at the end you're saying the Water Resource Committee should be the one that agrees that these conditions have been met. I mean, personally, I'd be like, it should be your water commissioners. Obviously, it's the Board of Selectmen, but I don't see why a subcommittee would be the one to make that choice when it's the commissioners who actually are charged with the duty of figuring that out. The other thing is, what was it here? Well-defined method including minimum analysis ability of our town manager. You're then saying that you're looking at an average of 3 years, including at least 1 year of drought. I guess without having Kevin or Sean here, I think we've had technically it's a drought every year. I mean, you know, I'm not talking about 2016, but all of a sudden we started out saying, you know, conserve water starting in August, then we backed it up to July, and then we backed up to June. Now I think we're looking at May.
But that's not.
That's what
First
we've
water
done.
restriction is based upon the state and the withdrawals from the basin. And that goes on almost the minute we start warm weather.
Right.
The second set of restrictions, the more stringent, are based upon the levels in our reservoir. So the first one is not just Scituate, it's Norwell, it's Marshfield, it's everybody that's drawing water from the same basin. The second is more particular to us and what's coming out of the reservoir.
And I only say that because I'm like, my understanding from sitting here, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, it's not necessarily that we don't have, from an annual perspective, sufficient water. We do. It's just the summers when all of a sudden, when it gets, the reservoir goes down, and then we're looking at our population goes up, the demand. But if we were to look and say, okay, through the course of the year, it's not like we're in a crisis. It's just, I think the real issue is the supply, not supply, the, what's the word I want? Retention. We've got to do a better job of retaining more water, more conservation. Frankly, I'd rather an article saying there shouldn't be any sprinkling of water in your yards.
Well, we already have that.
Period. I mean, and, you know, different other ways of conserving it before saying you can't build, because I'm concerned that maybe it's a little specific as to certain residences, and I think that's a problem potentially, discriminatory. And I don't know that's not what your intent is, but I'm like, if you're thinking low-income housing, you're thinking affordable housing, you're thinking, you know, senior housing, to me, those are important things. And if all of a sudden now we're going to say, we're not going to have that, you know, but we're going to continue to build houses one at a time, if there's going to be a complete moratorium, it's got to be across the board, no matter what. You can't add on a room, you can't do this, you can't do that. And I think that's a danger anyways. But I think, you know, until, and I agree with the water plan, we'd have to have that. But I don't know. Those are just my thoughts on it. You know, looking at it, I'm not saying your idea is a bad idea. I think you get the heart in the right place. I'm just not sure this is going to be answering and doing the things you expect. That's all.
Excuse me.
Just, Jim, did you talk to town council? Is this?
Yeah, and I spoke to John, I don't want to tell your last name, John, if I get it wrong.
It's fine.
The article as drafted is not legal, for one of the reasons John just mentioned. It does carve out an exemption. You have to have a complete moratorium. You can't allow certain classes or certain properties to hook up and others not. To use Brad's word, there's an amorphous ending date, which is not legal. It has to be for a definitive period. She cited numerous cases, and John has asked for those, but there's other things in the email. I haven't had a chance to get them to him. It's probably fixable on town meeting floor. He could probably fix it and take those restrictions out. Whether she would say that new article is then legal, I don't know, but looking at what he submitted, those two would make it so that it wouldn't be a legal article.
How do these, the colors, John, what do they represent?
Years, the code is up at the top.
Oh, I got you. 2016.
So
15, I got you.
16 was the year it crashed the fest.
Yeah.
Right. So, just a couple quick comments. We have very, very strict water guidelines. You know, we had, you know, when John came before us with his committee there, they really put strict, the sprinkling, the warnings, the levels, all of this stuff is very strict in our town. Most of the water of the reservoir is below ground. And what we're doing on top of that is trying to expand the reservoir. Sean, what was it, by almost 50%?
30 days. By increasing
So
that,
doubled.
we're getting 30 days of consumption when we construct this, raise the level of 1 foot.
So we're trying to raise the level of it, which is really, I don't know, that it's only like 3 feet or something.
It's going up, I think it's either,
Yeah, only a foot, but it's
Only
going
a
to give us
foot,
like
it's going to be
30
30 more days of retention of water. We got to fix the dam too, but those are the types of things that we're doing to try and, you know, as Karen was saying, the peaks and the valleys that we have, you know, there's 2 months when we use a heck of a lot of water.
That's the problem.
Right. But we, you know, but overall, we have plenty of water. Obviously, we never run out of water. And I think you cited somewhere where we try and work out relationships with other towns. And yeah, that's what we do in case, you know, so that there is never a situation where we would ever run out of water, where we'd talk to Marshfield or one of our neighbors and say, you know, if we're in a pinch, can we get some water?
And I'll just take it a step further. Those measures that Tony's talking about has gotten us recognition from DEP and help me out, Brad, or some. I mean, we you know, for our efforts, we were singled out for everything we had done.
I agree, the water conservation, I'm very aware of all of that. I'm on that committee, I'm part of that. And it's excellent, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Yeah, I think,
There was,
sorry.
just the only other thing I was going to say, when I came on the board, there was a moratorium on building because of sewer. And we had that on longer than we were supposed to. And DEP made us lift that, correct it. One of the first things we did was correct the sewer treatment plant back in '96. So it's the only experience I had, and then to, just to Jim's point, if it's not legal, it's not legal.
But it can be done, because you guys have.
Yeah, if it could be tweaked.
There is an impact too, because of the, if there's a moratorium on development, then it has a larger impact on budget. And one thing you don't realize is that we're making projections. Unfortunately, it's not like, sales and like the business model. We're projecting and forecasting our future as to what the revenue is going to be, set the budget, get the taxes in to pay for it afterwards. And as a part of that whole revenue, shall we say, projection is new growth. So if you cut new growth out by saying there's not going to be any more development, that's going to have a huge impact on the budget, to the tune of, Tony, what are you projecting?
$500,000 a year, yeah.
500, 600,000. How much is it?
You go through.
We raised it up to 600 for the next couple of years.
So I'm just saying that has a huge impact on saying your budget, which means now it does have an impact on potentially cutting town sources, town resources, which is a pretty profound impact. That's getting to your point, and I know where you're coming, you say, it's water. Water's very important, we gotta preserve it. I just don't think we're at that point of a dire situation. If we continue to have 2016 over and over and over again, that's a whole different discussion. But I think, it's funny, because I was gonna say, where's 2017, 18, but I'd be curious to see where they fall in the chart. Because this is a helpful chart to show you. I mean, 2011 was great. 2014 at the end, it looks like it dropped precipitously, as opposed to 2016, it kind of slowly slid little, if I'm getting this right, your chart here, but Karen, I think I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. No, it's like, John has served on this committee for a while, and the work, it is frustrating. So I have one question, and I know exactly where you're coming from, because I've sat in those meetings. And so we did ask, were you here when we asked when the study, is going to be there? Yeah.
So I just add into that. So we sat in a meeting with DPW, Water Resource Committee, and Planning Board last week. We looked at a almost final version of the RFP that could be issued within the next week or so. We could have someone on board for that month.
Okay.
I think it might be.
Yeah, that's okay.
So does that change your feeling about this petition, knowing that it's finally getting off the dime?
It makes me very happy that it's finally getting off the dime.
It makes all of us very happy.
Trust me. I mean, that's really good. And it's the beginning of dealing with a problem. And it's interesting that you say, it's not a problem that we have yet. But I think you were on the board in 2016, so you know how close.
I've been on the board for 12 years.
Okay.
I've seen the water go, and then we've talked about it. So, yeah, I realize it was a dire year.
We were in 2016.
It is.
If it didn't rain,
but I don't think we
deep water.
But I don't think, John, you take 2016 and say, hold the press and stop everything. We've got a major crisis and we can't do anything more about it. We had 2017, 2018, this coming year right now. Water with the recent snow, we'll see how it goes, should be fine. But yeah, every summer now I'm worried about it. Prior to 2016, I wasn't really worried about it, but there was a crisis in 1991, 92. There was a crisis back in the mid-early 60s.
60s was huge.
And, this could be cyclical. Maybe this is more towards the changing the environment. I don't know that answer. And yes, it gives me pause to be concerned, but do we immediately say, as of now, shut off any more connections? I mean, if you have 2016 over and over again, I think we'd be saying, before you even offer it, we got to think about maybe stopping all type of growth right now, because water's now literally at a premium. We're really having serious issues. I think there's a source issue that we've done. You've heard the gentleman this afternoon, or this evening, saying, we've got, 17A, we've got 18 that are coming on that's going to yield that we can use. We've got the Dolan Field that actually is another area that's going to hopefully bring more in. It's a different aquifer. We have not yet gone into looking in the West End for another, because that's another part of our charge, to maybe look for another field to look into. I even said the whole reservoir concept. There is another reservoir that was envisioned in the late 60s. It's a little bit further from where the current reservoir is. So I'm like, why not think about exploring more surface water so you can retain more? So I think these are things that we can do and explore, but it, obviously, if we continue to have a drought and drought and drought, then that's a different discussion.
No, it takes years. Look, I don't actually, it takes years to bring new water supplies on.
Oh, I know, yeah.
I don't actually expect you guys to support me. I get that. You have growth as the key to your planning process. This is a non-growth concept, so, but I submitted
don't want
the
you to turn this-
article for the
don't-
meeting, and I respect that you gave me the time to speak to you, and it's very late. I'm happy to stay as long as you want. Trust me, I could be here for hours and talk about this, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I'm not going to try to
I think you
badger
just
into-
misspoke. I mean, we're not growth focused by any means. You know, we.
John just said that you have
No, no.
$600,000
All he did was,
built into
no,
your
he just brought up the
budget
fact that
that's-
there's
that
other,
goes away.
there's other
The
components of it.
ramifications of what you're doing. I mean, my biggest concern is senior housing. If this goes through and we can't do any senior housing, we're shutting it all down, for how long? What are you going to tell residents? What are you going to tell? Well, because we think they're going to have another drought in the next year, or next 2 years, next 3 years, we're not too sure, we're going to do, how are you going to answer people that? And it's not because I'm looking for growth and development that I'm trying to build. Far from it. I'm just saying, these are things that you have to look at the bigger picture, because this article can have a real detrimental effect, not just on water, but a lot of things across the board. That's all.
And I would put it back to you on the flip of that one and say, what are you going to say to all of the residents who are currently in the town who expect to be able to use their water in a normal way when we drop below the state reservoir line and they say, you're an emergency use only, you have to retain that for your fire system, and, you know, if you think conservation was tough before and you were putting buckets under your faucet to water your garden during the shower warm-up, remember Al Bangert and all the videos and all that? You guys all remember that. Like, that wasn't even the bottom notch. It gets worse. The state comes in, they say, boom, you can't take water out of your reservoir.
It is complicated, and I know you appreciate how complicated this is. You know, we could talk about this all night long. I mean, I personally.
No, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I personally, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of different nuances to it. I totally get where you're coming from and where your motivation is, and it's admirable because you're trying to protect our resources. I personally, as this is written, can't support it. And we can talk about that a lot, but I think you already know where, and it's a nuanced question, more about how it impacts other things, and where we think our trajectory is based on all of the work between the resources and the planning department have done. So, you know, it's a good conversation. I applaud you for, you know, bringing it up, but it's not something that I personally am going to be able to support.
And the only thing I mean, it's you know, that's your solution is a Band-Aid, right? Because with the number of people that we have in town right now, we're going to have this problem regardless if there's 3 more houses or 30 more houses. So that's why we're trying to figure out solutions for this. Like John said, finding new wells. Like Sean said, expanding our reservoir. You know, getting cleaner water. All of these sort of things are the solution, as opposed to stop building. You know, that's kind of just, you know, I said a Band-Aid, but it's just kind of an alert, right? It's just getting people to say, hey, we need to stop building because of the water. And it's not completely true, right? We do have a water issue that we have to deal with, period, regardless of whether people build or not.
Correct.
And we're working on that, and you're working on that, right? I mean, that's what we're all trying to do. I think this is more of just I'll just say, you know, just telling people, hey, you know, the sky's falling, kind of, when maybe it's not. You know, maybe it's not today. And like Jim said, it's going to be short-lived. I mean, you can only put a moratorium on something for so long, even if the wording was right and even if the conditions were right. So regardless of the article passes or not, we still have to move forward in terms of dealing with our water supply. And we are, and we're going to continue, and you're going to continue, and we've got to find solutions on other fronts than that, I think. So.
Any other questions? John, thank you. Appreciate it. Sorry for the long wait.
Staying up so late.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure there's not a video of Al Banger in the shower. That's what I thought he said. So make sure that's not out there somewhere.
We're going to move quickly. It's 11 o'clock to our new business, which is the discussion vote special town meeting date for May 13th. I do not have it in front of me, but is there a...
Motion to hold a special town meeting on Monday, May 13th,
As soon as I get those.
2019, at the Scituate High School Gymnasium at 7 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Canfield, seconded by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have a discussion vote to open the May 13th, 2019 special town meeting warrant.
At 11:05 p.m.,
Motion by Mr. Harris,
March 5th, 2019.
and that's the motion that he opened up
What?
the May 13th,
Ah.
2019 special town
Yeah.
meeting warrant by Mr. Harris,
Second?
seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, next, we're going to
You said
close.
May, right?
I did say, what do you mean?
No, I'm opening
He
it right
opened
now.
it.
I'm
Oh, I got
opening it
you.
right now.
Move the Board of
Gotcha.
Selectmen.
Rain, hold on. You should actually vote the articles onto the warrant before we close the
I was
warrant.
going to say, don't we need to put the, yeah, I was going to suggest.
They did most, they did 5 and 25.
No, this is for the special.
Special.
They're going to open and close it, they have to vote
Move
to
that
put
the
the
Board of
article on, the article
Selectmen-
they have,
Oh, yeah, we have that.
Where is it here?
just to be sure.
Before they close it.
It's the
Yes.
senior center.
It's open right now, yep. So where did I put it?
So I'll move that down on the list.
So I was just
Okay.
moved to,
Open and close
Sir.
it without anything in it.
That's what we almost did, but I was going to ask the
Town
question,
meeting
like, don't we
ever.
need
that's
to
the
put
article
something
for
in there?
Yeah.
the, for the senior center project on the May
there's a-
13th town meeting warrant.
You have it?
Yeah.
Mine got buried.
Good thing I was paying attention.
A lot of
But
paper.
we just only
today.
say,
Would have been a fast town meeting, Sean.
Too fast.
Everyone come together. No, we're done. I got it.
all right, so is somebody moving to place
Yeah, there was
the,
a,
The wording?
oh, here we go.
I don't think we just have to.
we need the article, the
Here's
exact
article.
wording,
So
or?
the article is construction of a new senior center and rehabilitation of Veterans Memorial Gym. Article language review, no. My other two, right.
I don't know if we have a suggested motion, do we?
Oh, no, okay, so that's the ballot question, is separate, so.
Motion is there to add the
Oh, here it is, motion.
construction of new senior center.
Move that the town appropriate the sum of 11.9 million, do I do this whole thing? Okay, $1 million to demolish Section C of the Old Gates School, design, construct, and furnish a new senior center and design, renovate and furnish the Veterans Memorial Gym. To meet such appropriation, authorize the treasurer with the approval of the selectmen to borrow up to 11.9 million under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 7(1), or other enabling authority, provided, however, that said appropriation is subject to affirmative vote of the town to exempt the funds required for the payment of interest and principal on the said borrowing from the limitations of taxes imposed under Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 21C, or Prop 2.5, so-called, and further that the selectmen are authorized to apply for grants, gifts, or donations for the purposes of this vote from federal, state, or private sources, and the said selectmen were hereby authorized to accept grants, gifts, or donations on behalf of the town, and that the amount of the authorized borrowing shall be reduced by the amounts of grants, gifts, and donations received prior to such borrowing.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Canfield, seconded by Mr. Harris. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay.
Just further move to authorize the town administrator or town council to make any necessary changes to said article.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to amend by Mr. Harris, as said by, as spoken by Jim Boudreau, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
So we just amended that motion just so that there's a change.
Do we need to make this one?
That she just did.
No, she did that one.
No, she did this one.
The bottom one's the,
Okay.
You have it,
Close the
right?
warrant.
Sure you have.
So, does anybody want to move to close?
You have to have the
Ballot?
ballot.
oh, it's on there.
Right, but the ballot question doesn't go on town meeting, it doesn't go on the warrant.
That's not on the warrant, right.
So they've opened the warrant, they've inserted the warrant article, now they can close the warrant, and then they can vote the ballot question.
Move the Board of Selectmen close the warrant for the special town meeting to be held on Monday, May 13th, 2019.
At 11:07.
Thank you.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by
Second.
Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, next, that takes care of the, do we, article, motion, and ballot question for the annual town election. Do we want to move the ballot question for the,
Just put away.
question number one?
Move,
Okay.
Do we need to read it, or can we just say,
move to accept the senior center article motion and ballot question for the annual town election be held on May 18th, 2019.
Second.
Do we have the do we have the wording of the
Do we have to read it?
ballot question?
we do?
Here.
Shall the,
I would probably posit that the selectmen vote to place the following question on the annual town election and read the question.
move to put the following question on the ballot.
Hold on one second, let's just do,
I rescind.
okay, she motioned, he seconded. How about if you rescind your motion?
I would like to rescind my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Yes, second.
That's seconded by Mr. Harris. All those in favor to rescind the motion that was proposed?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now it's unanimous. Now let's go to the next one.
Move to add a ballot question to, or a question to the ballot on May 18, 2019, that reads, shall the town of Scituate be allowed to exempt from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, so-called, the amounts required to pay for the bonds to be issued in order to demolish Section C of the Gates School, design, construct, and furnish a new senior center, and design, renovate, and furnish the Veteran Memorial Gym?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Vignani, seconded by
Left out the
Mr.
word Old.
Harris.
You said Gates School as opposed to Old Gates School.
Okay.
I don't want to tear down the
So
ceiling.
discussion. Can you modify your motion
I would
to
like to
include the
modify-
former Old Gate School?
Did I not say old?
No.
I'd like to modify my former motion to be the Old Gate School.
Is there a second to motion?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So we just modified the actual debt exclusion reading. So, getting back to the original motion that you had about putting this on the ballot, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's official. It's on. Okay.
I'm having fun yet.
One-day liquor license.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to St. Mary's of the Nativity Parish Center on March 23rd, 2019, from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. for the Choral Arts Society of the South Shore.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
And now we have board appointments.
Oh, yay.
Do you want to vote them on tonight, or what do you guys want to do? It's 11:10.
Well,
Let's postpone it.
there are 3 applicants for water resources and 3 positions.
So you
I
wanna put them all on?
note, Mr. Chairman.
And they're shorthanded because they've had people resign, so.
They're what's that?
They're shorthanded because they've had several people resign,
Okay.
meaning the water resources.
Do you have the names still?
Somewhere. Hold on. A tick. It's up here. Here we go. Sure. Okay.
I'll make the motion if you want. Just slide me the name. Move to appoint.
Can you read that?
No. Jacqueline
This is true.
Bone.
Trying to make it get bigger. Jacqueline Bond.
Jacqueline Bond,
Kevin
to the Water
Finney.
Resource Commission for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named and the completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Harris. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Kevin Finney.
Okay, move to appoint Kevin.
It's unanimous, 4. Go ahead.
I was just gonna put a second one up.
Yep, go ahead. Go
Move to
ahead.
appoint Kevin Finney to the Water Resource Committee for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Joanne?
Uh-huh.
Move to appoint Joanne Wyckoff to the Water Resource Commission for a term of 3 years or until a successor is named and completion of the Conflict of Interest Law online training program is completed within 30 days.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by?
Karen?
Oh, second.
By Ms. Canfield. All in favor? Aye.
Is Tony here?
It's unanimous. There we go.
And then Jim does those.
Yep.
That's it.
All right, okay.
I'm going to skip liaison reports. Is there
Oh, I
any
had a
kind of
bunch.
skip correspondence? And I'm going to say, let's get to the approval of the minutes of the meeting, if that's okay. It's 11:15. We've been here for 4 hours, and I just, you know what?
No,
We're beyond 11 o'clock. That's the dying
you're right.
hour.
I'm doing fine, John.
I know. It's time to shut down.
I move, what do we move?
Moving to appoint the minutes of the Board of Selectmen's meeting held on February 19th, 2019.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Harris, seconded by Ms. Canfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous?
Move to adjourn. To
Oh,
sign
dear God,
documents.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Harris, seconded by Mr. Vignani. All in favor?
Aye.
I would
Good night,
like the-
folks. Thank you. Cam,
I'd like
thank
the
you.
minutes to reflect